quorum of 100 voters is present. This annual town meeting is called to order. The meeting has been called pursuant to a warrant dated April 17th, 2025, duly served and returned. Could you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Not me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. Welcome to the annual town meeting. My name is Michael Wise. I'm Great Barrington's elected moderator. Thank you for coming out for this first in living memory Saturday session. I was hoping that the moment I called it to order, the heavens would open and you realize what a good idea it is to be indoors, because outdoors is too terrible. With luck, we'll finish this meeting just during the rainstorm and it'll be all clear at the end of it. A particular welcome to anybody who is new to town meeting. This is the town's legislative assembly. This is our time to get together to talk about and decide about how we spend our money and about the town's laws and regulations. The reason the warrant has these items on it is state law says these decisions are up to the voters, that is, you. Some housekeeping things. Fire regulations prohibit standing in the aisles. Please check where the exits are. The meeting is being recorded by CTSB. Please turn off your cell phones. Some introductions here at the table. From my right, I hope I get this right, Town Clerk Josh Reisen, Town Council, I'm in the wrong order, Town Finance Director Allison Crespo, Interim Town Manager Chris Rembold, Town Council David Daneski. Okay, a hand for Chris, he's doing at least 2 jobs. From my left, the Select Board, Steve Bannon, Eric Gabriel, gotta get the order right, Garfield Reed, Ben Elliott, and the Finance Committee, Phil Orenstein, Milena Cherna, Ann O'Dwyer, Rich Geiler, and Badana Mar. I'll explain some of the procedures we'll use for the meeting. This is the same explanation I did 2 weeks ago. Many of you have heard it recently, but I will try to be thorough just to be sure people are clear. The town meeting is governed by the Constitution and general laws of Massachusetts, the Charter and bylaws of the town of Great Barrington. The reference guide for matters of parliamentary procedure is town meeting time. Only registered voters of Great Barrington may vote. Persons who are not Great Barrington voters may address the town meeting with the permission of the moderator. 5 non-voters have requested and been granted permission to address the meeting. Non-voters and non-residents may attend the meeting. In the past, their attendance was at the discretion of the moderator. After receiving a complaint at the special town meeting last month, we decided to no longer use the criterion of voter or resident status for entering the meeting. The seats in the first row over here in front are for persons who are not Great Barrington voters. Motions and amendments, principal motions certainly, and substantive amendments must be in writing and presented to the moderator, and I thank one participant who has already provided me with the amendments he's planning to make. It's a great improvement over jotting them down on the back of a scrap of paper as you walk toward the dais. If you wish to make a motion or to speak on a matter, please go to the microphone in the center and wait to be recognized. Be prepared to speak when your turn comes. Please state your name and your voting address and then wait to be recognized. When a motion is made and seconded, the person who made the motion will normally be recognized to speak first in support of it. You may speak once on a motion for a time not to exceed 3 minutes. To be sure we stay on track, I'm using a timer on my phone at the podium. It will turn orange when you get close. It'll turn red when the limit is reached. Statements should be addressed to the pending motion. Please be considerate. Do not repeat points made by others already. We decide things by counting votes, not counting speeches. The speakers who are seated on stage will be recognized and may speak from the stage to make motions sponsored by the Finance Committee and the Select Board, and to respond to questions on them. All the items on tonight's agenda are in fact being presented by the Select Board, the Finance Committee, the Planning Board, and the Community Preservation Committee. A motion to call the question, that is to end debate and move directly to a vote on the pending matter, must be made, like any other motion, from the microphone, not shouting from your seat. It requires a 2/3 vote and is not debatable. Please be considerate of your other voters' desire to be heard, as well as all of our patients. A long colored card has been issued to each voter. Use that card to vote by show of hands. Virtually all of our votes today will be by show of hands. To tally the vote by show of hands, there is a counter assigned to each section. The counters will count up the section and then report their votes from the microphone so we can get an immediate result. A set of colored ballots with yes or no on them has been issued to each voter with your packet. When a vote by secret ballot is used, and there are 2 that are required, I will specify which color ballot to use. You'll go to the ballot boxes in the mezzanine area and deposit the ballots, and then return to your seats, please. A few somewhat technical things. Votes to borrow money or increase the town's debt limit must be taken by secret ballot. Those are the 2 I'm referring to. On a motion or an amendment to raise more than the Finance Committee has recommended, the vote will be by secret ballot if 20 voters request it. I may ask if there are 20 voters who want that, if such a thing comes up. Changing the method of voting on a motion is done by making an incidental motion during the debate on it. If you want a secret ballot, you need to make a motion to that effect, and there will be a vote on whether to do so. In the event of a tie vote, the motion fails. I am not going to cast the so-called casting vote myself. A motion for reconsideration of a vote may be permitted only if made within 15 minutes after the announcement of the result of a vote. Only 1 motion for reconsideration is allowed for any individual article. This is a Great Barrington Town bylaw. When you entered the meeting this evening, you received a copy of the warrant, which is, of course, the agenda. You also received a separate document with details of the town's proposed budget and a separate document about the Community Preservation Act items. In connection with the motions on some of the articles, including the budget articles, I will refer to these articles and give some instructions about the process for debate, 1 item at a time on them. We will take up the articles in the order they're printed in the warrant, and we expect to conclude today. 2 preliminary items. Is there a motion to dispense with reading the details of the warrant?
So moved.
Second? All in favor, say aye. All opposed? Thank you. Another procedural motion. I will entertain a motion that the moderator be allowed to declare a 2/3 vote. This is allowed by Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 3915. So moved. Has it seconded? Second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. This will speed things up greatly. Before proceeding formally to the warrant articles, which start with all the financial items, I will recognize the town manager for a short presentation about the budget.
Good afternoon, everyone. Chris Rembold, 16 Castle Hill Avenue, and your interim town manager. Thanks for coming today. I just wanted to give a quick overview of the town meeting, and then we can dive into an overview of the town's proposed FY26 budget. As the moderator said, you are the legislative body, and this is the time, the assembly, to vote on spending and town laws and bylaws, including zoning, as well as land-related issues like easements and rights-of-way. Articles 1 through 18 today deal with spending of one kind or another. Some are borrowing, some are appropriations of tax revenue for the coming year. The town budget is inclusive of the town's regional school district assessment. Those first 18 articles also include special non-recurring projects and the Community Preservation Act items. Articles 19 to 25 our local laws, including zoning, and then 26 through 29 deal with land-related things like land takings, easements, and dispositions. So just a very quick overview of the town budget. Your boards and your staff worked incredibly hard this year, countless hours, wading into the details of every line, every expenditure line, and we're proposing here a very conservative budget for FY26, but we will still deliver some exceptional public services, and we're really proud of what we're presenting to you tonight, this afternoon. Many cuts were debated, some were made, and in fact, we worked really hard at the end of the day to avoid a Proposition 2.5 override. This is, again, very conservative budget, very tight budget. So I would urge you that if anybody has the desire to add money to the budget, add expenditures, please don't. We're very, very close. And if you do, then find somewhere else to cut. It's that close. A few things quickly. This budget conservatively estimates new growth and local receipts. That is revenue coming in. So we don't want to think that we're going to be rich next year. We utilize 2 one-time transfers from special reserves. You'll see that in Article 3 today. It does increase the Finance Committee reserve in case there are some unanticipated expenses or emergencies in the coming year. And as I said, we did avoid the need for a Proposition 2.5 override, but it requires a substantial infusion of free cash. And you'll see that as one of the financial articles as well. In terms of revenue, the town's revenue is primarily funded by tax revenue, although this year we have a really significant amount of grants related to capital improvements that we're happy to report. In terms of expenditures, overall, the town's operating budget is $16.6 million. That's just a 1.9% increase over last year. Really, really tight budget. The school budget, and you'll hear the superintendent talk about that, is up 5.5%. This is just a quick overview of the town operating budgets exclusive of school or sewer. This is just the town operating budgets over the years. As I said, for FY26, $16.6 million, and that's one of the smallest increases in years. Article 4 is the town's operating budget. You'll hear the moderator go line by line, and again, you have this in front of you. You got a handout when you came in tonight. Overall, as I said, we've done a really fantastic job keeping the increase really modest, only $313,000 over last year. And this in a climate of ever-increasing costs, electricity, insurance, et cetera, are all going up. And yet, we're presenting to you a town budget that's under a 2% increase. I'll note that 40% of this budget is made up by 3 major lines. Debt, which is 21% of the budget. Retirement is 8%, and insurance is 11% of the budget. Those are really big lines. And we're really happy to report that we're controlling our spending, our debt, our debt service, and our insurance this year, despite the fact that we've seen increases in all of those lines. Article 5 is the capital proposal tonight. This is the total amount, this $13 million. This is the total amount that we hope to accomplish over the next few years. It does not include this dollar amount here. It does not include the Brookside Bridge article, which is Article 13 today. A substantial amount of this $13 million, in fact, over half, or 55%, is proposed to be funded by grants that we have in hand. We're only borrowing, we only propose to borrow and seek your authorization for $5.5 million of that total. So a really good job by staff in getting grants this year. There are some special expenditure items in your warrant. As I said, Article 3 has 2 one-time transfers from special funds. Those are the first 2 lines there, Conservation Commission and Cemetery Buildings and Grounds. Then Articles 9 through 13 have all of those other rows there. It includes vocational transportation for students going to Pittsfield for vocational education, as well as their tuition. It includes funding the Southern Berkshire Ambulance for the next year. It includes an appropriation of short-term rental revenue to the Housing Trust Fund, as well as I mentioned in Article 13, the Brookside Bridge authorization. And the legal fees for rights-of-ways, you'll hear those in the last few articles tonight. So just in closing, as I said, this is a really conservative, really tight budget. As presented, this would result in a $14.09 tax rate. Likely that will be lower once the new values come in. So really, really low increase, if any, to your tax rate. As I said, there's really very little room to add expenditures, so please don't. Our levy capacity with this budget will only be $102,000. That means there's not a lot of room for unanticipated expenses. That's a lot better margin than last year, but again, we're very, very close on our margins. That being said, we still will have a solid $2.9 million of free cash and a really healthy retained earnings balance for our sewer enterprise fund. And we have not had to tap into, as you see those last two lines there, to our stabilization funds for operating or for capital. Our department heads are here tonight. If you have questions, they'd be happy to answer them on the operating budget or the capital items. Again, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you. We'll take the questions as matters come up, warrant item by item. Begin with Article 1, authorizing revolving fund totals. Is there a motion from the Finance Committee?
Voted that the town set the fiscal year 2026 spending limits for town revolving funds as set forth in the warrant, namely plumbing inspections, $25,000, wiring inspections, $65,000, gas inspections, $20,000, parks and recreation, $20,000, council on aging transportation, $150,000, and electric vehicle charging stations, $20,000.
Is there a second? Second. Motion made and seconded. Is there an explanation necessary from the Finance Committee or from the staff? I think this is self-explanatory. All in favor, please raise your cards. All opposed, please raise your cards. Motion passes unanimously at 18 minutes after the hour. Article number 2, elected officials' salaries. Is there a motion from the Finance Committee?
Voted that the town fix the salaries of all elected officials for the period of July 1, 2025 to June 30th, 2026, as indicated in the warrant, namely Select Board, $24,500 total, $4,900 per Select Board member.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there discussion or questions about the motion to pay the Select Board? Seeing none, all in favor raise your cards. Thank you. All opposed? Remarkable. Motion passes unanimously at 19 minutes after. Article 3, appropriate funds for Conservation Commission and cemetery care. This is moving some money around. Is there a motion from the Finance Committee?
Voted that the town appropriate sums of money and transfer them to the fiscal year 26 operating budget as follows. $20,000 from the Conservation Fund to the fiscal year 26 operating budget of the Conservation Commission, and $21,666 from the town's expendable trust for cemetery perpetual care, and $18,334 from the town's sale of cemetery lots fund to the fiscal year 26 operating budget of the Buildings and Grounds Division of the Department of Public Works.
Motion has been made and seconded. Are there questions or discussion about this motion, which Chris alluded to in his introduction? Seeing none, all in favor, raise your cards. Thank you. All opposed? Motion passes unanimously at 20 after. Article 4, this will take more than a minute. This is the town operating budget. Is there a motion from the Finance Committee?
Voted that the town raise and appropriate such sums of money necessary for the operation of departments in the town for the ensuing fiscal year for the purposes outlined below. In general government, for the Town Manager Select Board, $460,150. For the Finance Committee / Reserve Fund, $150,200. For the Financial Coordinator / Town Accountant, $212,110. For Technology, $356,195. For the Assessor's Office, $202,840. For the Treasurer Collector, $280,396. For Human Resources, $82,508. For the Town Clerk / Elections, $157,410. For Conservation, $27,555. For the Planning Board, $6,360. For the Zoning Board of Appeals, $0. For the Office of Planning / Community Development, $169,095. In Public Safety, for the Police Department, $2,192,540. For Fire Department, $909,669. For Communications and Emergency Management, $24,461. For Building Inspector, $237,400. For Animal Control, $12,000. In the Department of Public Works, for Buildings and Grounds, $994,603. For Highway, $1,830,539. For the Transfer Station, $156,929. $921, thank you. Under Cultural, Recreation, and Human Services.
Okay.
For the Health Department, $147,246. For Human Services, $0. For the Council on Aging, $240,817. For Veterans Affairs, $184,742. For Libraries, $649,382. For Parks and Recreation, $119,600. For various boards and commissions, $21,000. For celebrations and events, $7,000. Under Miscellaneous, for insurance, $1,906,035. For debt service, $3,598,685. For retirement, $1,295,285. For the total general fund budget of $16,632,744.
Before we accept a second, I want to clarify to be sure that the numbers that you have just read accurately reflect the result of the vote on Article 3.
Yes. Now, on that score for conservation, it's $27,555, which is $20,000 less because Article 3 passed. And under Buildings and Grounds, we're voting on $994,603, which is a reduction of $40,000 that was passed in Article 3.
Okay. Is there a second to the motion? Second. Motion has been made and seconded. Those numbers also vary slightly from the numbers in the warrant for the reasons we just discussed. I'll go through the motion one major item at a time. If you have a question or wish to make a comment or amendment on it, please come to the microphone and be prepared to do that after I've read through the entire list. General Government, Town Manager Select Board. Nobody's, if you want to, say the word hold and that, I'll mark it. Nobody? Okay. Finance Committee. Financial Coordinator. Technology. Assessor's Office. Treasurer and Collector. Town Clerk and Elections. Conservation. Planning Board. Zoning Board of Appeals. Office of Planning and Community Development. Under Public Safety, questions or comments about the Police Department. Fire Department. Communications and Emergency Management. Building Inspector. Animal Control. Under Public Works, Buildings and Grounds. Highway. Transfer Station. Under Cultural, Recreation, and Human Services, Health Department, Human Services, Council on Aging, Veterans Affairs, Libraries, Parks and Recreation, various boards and commissions, celebrations and events, under Miscellaneous, Insurance, hold on insurance. Debt service. Retirement.
Mr. Moderator, did you miss Human Resources?
Yes, he did.
Did I miss Human Resources? All right. I thought I said Human Service. It's Human Services. Is there a hold on Human Services?
No, Human Resources, I'm sorry.
General government.
Oh, I might have. All right.
Under General Government.
Hold on, Human Resources, okay. There are two items for which there has been a hold. Rather than do the other drill, let's hear the questions and comments on those first. Human Resources.
James Bailey, 9 Lynn Lane, Housatonic. Under Human Resources, the $1,000 bilingual stipend. Can we have an explanation, please?
Staff want to make an explanation of that stipend, which is included in the big number.
The original proposal was for $2,000. That was cut to $1,000. That pays for staff who perform extra services above and beyond their role to help with translating, for folks who come into town hall who need language assistance, whether it's paying a bill or starting a business or getting married or requesting a record. It's really critical that everybody have the information they need in the language that they best understand. So that's our goal with that $1,000 stipend for a translator.
Bilingual is how many languages are offered?
The question is how many languages are offered?
That
The
is a
answer
person who speaks English and Spanish.
So at the moment it's Spanish.
So Spanish only. We're paying somebody $1,000 on town time they're already being paid for to get an extra $1,000 to speak only Spanish to those who need help? A simple Google search will reveal that Great Barrington, don't shake your head, ma'am. That's disrespectful, completely disrespectful.
Please address the moderator. I'll take care of
Mr.
the
Moderator,
relevant-
that was completely disrespectful. I don't appreciate that. It was inappropriate. My point is, a simple Google search will find that bilingual Spanish interpreters are available for free in the town of Great Barrington. We're not going to have to pay $1,000. We shouldn't be paying an added $1,000 to an individual who's already getting paid to be on town time. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments about Human Resources? There was a hold placed on insurance. Questions, comments about insurance?
John Breasted, 151 Christian Hill Road. I have a couple of information questions about insurance. I request, Mr. Moderator, that you not subtract the time to get the answers from the potential 3 minutes for comment.
I'll take that under advisement. We'll see.
So, under insurance, on one of the last pages of the budget, there are 6, 8 or more line items. My first question, and I have only 2 questions for information about this overall item, is I don't see a line there for liability insurance. Could the appropriate official, through you, Mr. Moderator, explain where liability insurance fits into this budget?
Question number 1 is, where is liability insurance? You have other questions?
Well, no, I guess that's the basic question, and that,
That's your question? Okay. Could the staff explain where on the detail about insurance we find liability insurance?
I believe it would be under the line entitled General Insurance.
general insurance, that's line 301.
Yes, line 301.
And the appropriation this year, or for fiscal 2026, is an increase of $3,200 from 100,000, am I reading right? No, 150,000 to
I believe it's 163.
160,000 to 163,200. Is that correct?
That's what I have in front of me, yes.
Okay, my comment here is that, like many citizens, I try to do my homework before town meeting, and I had naively assumed that there would be a line item in the town budget for any fees paid to lawyers to defend against lawsuits against the town. Now, we have a major lawsuit, federal lawsuit, pending against at least 2, maybe 3 employees of this town in connection with the incident at the middle school, December 8th, 2023. I asked about this question for the school budget too, just a couple of days ago, and Superintendent Dillon got back to me very promptly, which is typical of his style. He's a prompt responder. And he said that the federal suit against the school committee is covered by their liability insurance. So budgets are sometimes very revealing, and sometimes they conceal significant expenses. The expense of defending, just for the town, the expense in lawyers' fees of defending a federal civil suit for damages, which was brought by a teacher, the teacher who was involved in that incident, those are going to be substantial fees. But we can't, in this budget accounting, we can't find out what those fees are. Presumably they're folded into the insurance premium, and maybe like our automobile insurance, when we have some significant accident damage, it gets amortized into the premium, and the premium goes up a bit. I'm wondering if there's anybody among the officials seated beside you, Mr. Moderator, who can maybe give us more detail.
If I understand your inquiry, you want to know how much of our general insurance fund can be explained by the need to defend against this particular set of lawsuits, and/or the amount of legal expenses elsewhere in the budget that are being spent to defend this lawsuit.
Yes.
Is that your question?
Yes.
Thank you. Is there a response from the staff about that?
Well, I can't give you a specific number of what's being spent on that defense. No, because it is provided by the insurance company. The attorneys are being paid by the insurance company for that particular defense. We pay our insurance rate. There's no large increase expected that is directly tied to that lawsuit defense. One of the reasons we have insurance is to be able to have professionals to defend the town against things like that.
Mr. Moderator, I'm not in any
Okay,
way,
your time is nearly up, John. What else?
I'm not in any way wanting to imply that I oppose the budgeting for liability insurance. That seems like a very prudent thing for a town government to have as part of its insurance package. What I want to express here is just an opinion that that incident a year and a half ago was the consequence of some unfortunately mistaken judgments made by town employees, and that just like we say elections have consequences, mistakes that generate lawsuits have financial consequences to the society at large. It's too bad we can't get that specified in better numerical detail than we're able to now.
Thank you. Are there any other contributions to the two held items? Seeing none, and since neither asked for an amendment, we will vote on the main motion. All in favor, please raise your cards. Thank you. All opposed? A couple of people are opposed. Motion carries at 238. Thank you very much for your patience on that one. The next is Article 5, a list of 17 capital spending and borrowing authorization items. Is there a motion from the Finance Committee?
Voted that the sum of $13,079,100 is appropriated to pay costs of undertaking various capital projects and acquiring various items of capital equipment as follows. 1, purchasing an all-weather drone for the police department at an approximate cost of $14,500, including the payment of all costs incidental and related thereto, and that to meet this appropriation, the town raise and appropriate said funds, such appropriation to be subject to a Proposition 2.5 capital expenditure exclusion. 2, purchasing an e-bike for the police department at an approximate cost of $6,000, including the payment of all costs incidental and related thereto, and that to meet this appropriation, the town raise and appropriate such funds, such appropriation to be subject to a Proposition 2.5 capital expenditure exclusion. 3, purchasing and equipping 2 new police cruisers at a total cost of approximately $127,100, including the payment of all costs incidental and related thereto, and that to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the select board, is authorized to borrow said amount under and pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 7.1, or any other authority, and to issue bonds or notes of the town therefore, and such appropriation to be subject to a Proposition 2.5 debt exclusion. 4, acquiring new radios for the fire department at an approximate cost of $115,000, including the payment of all costs incidental and related thereto, and that to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the select board, is authorized to borrow said amount under and pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 7-1, or any other authority, and to issue bonds or notes of the town therefore, such appropriation to be subject to a Proposition 2.5 debt exclusion. 5, acquiring a new technology file server and accessories for Town Hall at an approximate cost of $22,000, including the payment of all costs incidental and related thereto, and that to meet this appropriation, the town raise and appropriate said funds, such appropriation to be subject to a Proposition 2.5 capital expenditure exclusion. 6, acquiring a new lawnmower with attachments for the Department of Public Works at an approximate cost of $12,500, including the payment of all costs incidental and related thereto, and that to meet this appropriation, the town raise and appropriate such funds, such appropriation to be subject to a Proposition 2.5 capital expenditure exclusion. 7, acquiring a new field mower with attachments for the Department of Public Works at an approximate cost of $35,000, including the payments of all costs incidental and related thereto, and that to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the select board, is authorized to borrow said amounts under and pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 7-1, or any other authority, and to issue bonds or notes of the town therefore, such appropriation to be subject to a Proposition 2.5 debt exclusion.
Item 8, acquiring construction mats for the Department of Public Works at an approximate cost of $6,400, including the payment of all costs incidental and related thereto, and that to meet this appropriation, the town raise and appropriate said funds, such appropriation to be subject to a Proposition 2.5 capital expenditure exclusion. Item 9, purchasing and equipping a new dump truck with attachments for the Department of Public Works at an approximate cost of $400,000, including the payment of all costs incidental and related thereto, and that to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the select board, is authorized to borrow said amount under and pursuant to MGL 4471 or any other authority, and to issue bonds or notes of the town therefore, and such appropriation to be subject to Proposition 2.5 debt exclusion. Item 10, purchasing and equipping a new excavator with attachments for the Department of Public Works at an approximate cost of $250,000, including the payment of all costs incidental and related thereto, and that to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the select board, is authorized to borrow said amount under and pursuant to MGL Section 4471 or any other authority, and to issue bonds or notes of the town therefore, such appropriation to be subject to a Proposition 2.5 debt exclusion. Item 11, purchasing and equipping a new dump truck for the cemetery division of the Department of Public Works at an approximate cost of $130,000, including the payment of all costs incidental and related thereto, and that to meet this appropriation, the town appropriate funds from the town's sale of cemetery lots fund. Purchasing and equipping a new item 12, purchasing and equipping a new pickup truck with attachments for the Department of Public Works at an approximate cost of $66,000, including the payment of all costs incidental and related thereto, and that to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the select board, is authorized to borrow said amount under and pursuant to MGL 4471 or any other authority, and to issue bonds or notes of the town therefore, such appropriation to be subject to a Proposition 2.5 debt exclusion. Item 13, purchasing and equipping a new utility van for the Department of Public Works at an approximate cost of $66,000, including the payment of all costs incidental and related thereto, and to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the select board, is authorized to borrow said amount under and pursuant to MGL Section 4471 or any other authority, and to issue bonds or notes of the town therefore, such appropriation to be subject to a Proposition 2.5 debt exclusion.
Acquiring a new transit vehicle at approximate cost of $20,000, including the payment of all costs incidental and related thereto, and that to meet this appropriation, the town raise and appropriate said funds, such appropriation to be subject to a Proposition 2 1/2 capital expenditure exclusion. 15, making various buildings and grounds improvements, including the courthouse, Mason Library, and emergency improvements to buildings townwide and related architectural, engineering, and planning services at an approximate cost of $463,000, including the payment of all costs incidental and related thereto, and that to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the select board, is authorized to borrow $268,000 under and pursuant to Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 44, Section 7, Parent 1, or any other authority, and to issue bonds or notes of the town therefore, subject to a Proposition 2 1/2 debt exclusion, and that $195,000 be transferred from available grant funds. 16, making various street and bridge improvements at an approximate cost of $11,005,000, including the payment of all costs incidental and related thereto, and that to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the select board, is authorized to borrow $4,025,000 under and pursuant to Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 44, Section 7, Parent 1, or any other authority, and to issue bonds or notes of the town therefore, subject to a Proposition 2 1/2 debt exclusion, and that $6,980,000 be transferred from available grants and from Chapter 90 funds so called. 7.
Point of order? Which will be explained in a moment, I'm sure.
17, making parks improvements at an approximate cost of $332,000, including the payment of all costs incidental and related thereto, and that to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the select board, is authorized to borrow $200,000 under and pursuant to Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 44, Section 7, Parent 1, or any other authority, and to issue bonds or notes of the town therefore, subject to a Proposition in 2 1/2 debt exclusion, that $25,000 be transferred from free cash, and that $107,000 be transferred from available grant funds. Provided, however, that any such borrowing authorized by this vote shall be contingent upon approval at an election of a Proposition 2 1/2 debt exclusion, and provided further that any appropriation of funds authorized by this vote and subject to a capital expenditure exclusion shall be contingent upon approval at an election of a Proposition 2 1/2 capital expenditure exclusion. The amounts authorized to be expended by this vote, including by borrowing, are estimates based on information available, and the town is authorized to expend more for any project and less for another, so long as, in the judgment of the select board, each project to be funded can be completed within the total amount authorized to be expended by this vote.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Thank you for your patience. It is us lawyers who insist upon all that verbiage in each one of these things. In response to the inquiry there, as we go through them one by one, I think this will be explained. The motion might not precisely track everything in the warrant. I believe that in this case, for example, 2 items that are in the warrant got included in 1 item in the motion. The overall result is the same, but I think we can parse this out as we go through this one item by one item. I will do the same thing I did for the operating budget. I'll go through them one by one. If you have a question or a comment or want to make a change, be ready to go to the microphone and explain it. We'll take up all of those items together after I've gone through the list. Item 1, drone for the police department. Item 2, e-bike for the police department. Item 3, 2 new police cruisers. Item 4, radios for the fire department. Item 5, file server for town hall. Item 6, lawnmower for DPW. Item 7, field mower for DPW. Item 8, construction mats for DPW. Item 9, dump truck for DPW. Item 10, excavator for DPW. Hold on the excavator. Item 11, dump truck for the cemetery division. Item 12, pickup truck for DPW. Item 13, utility van for DPW. Item 14, transit vehicle. Item 15, buildings and grounds improvements generally. Item 16, street and bridge improvements. Hold on that one, that's for the question arrows, I think. Item 17, parks improvements. Hold on parks improvements. There are 4 items held. I think it'll be simpler to go through the held items and then take one vote rather than take 2 secret ballot votes. So the person or persons with a hold on item 1 about the drone, could you come to the microphone and state your question or comment?
My name is Ananda Timpain, 139 Seacon Crossroad. I just have a question about this. My first question is this the only drone for the police department? And my second question is I'd like to understand what its use will be.
I couldn't quite understand you, Ananda.
Sure. First question is this the first drone we're purchasing for the police department? The second question is, I'd like to understand how it will be used.
Okay, the question is this the first drone and how is it going to be used?
Good afternoon, Paul Storty, Chief of Police. Just give you a little history on it. A couple of years back, we decided to start a drone program. I was able to start that program with funds through MEMA and also through a generous contribution from John B. Hall Oil Company. So it didn't cost the taxpayers any money. We then started the program and we saw the benefits of it. And Captain Carlotta, who's one of our licensed pilots, can speak to some of the benefits and some of the applications that we've used it for.
Okay.
Adam Carlotto, Great Barrington Police. Just basically what we see in the most usefulness has been is the search and rescue application. It also came pretty beneficial during the brush fire last year with the fire department. So again, we're expanding off of the first drone we have to this one, which is an all-weather drone. So again, I would say search and rescue is primary. Again, the brush fire was beneficial, and I'm not sure if there's a follow-up to that or no.
Thank you.
Further questions or comments on the...
Could I just add one more thing?
Okay.
One of the shortcomings after we did our debrief after the brush fire was that the current drone that we have had limitations that it couldn't fly in inclement weather. So that limited us a whole day of operations and the access to be able to fly that drone. So after the incident, when we did our debrief, we decided to analyze and say, what can we do better if we have another situation like that? Or if we have an incident where there's inclement weather. And Captain Carlotta did the research, discovered that there's an all-weather drone that we could fly in any weather, and we wouldn't have those limitations.
Any further questions or changes to item number 1? Seeing none. The next item held was item 10, the excavator for DPW. Please come to the microphone. Thank you.
Charles Williamson, 48 Blue Hill Road. I'm just questioning the trying to save some money. Wichita, I think you've done a good job on your budget this year. But $250,000 for a backhoe, I think we could possibly rent at Taylor Rental a backhoe for the amount that we're going to use it. Like last year, I tried to have you stop buying a chipper, which was $80,000, which the town got, and I don't think you're going to use it in the next 10 years. I don't see the need for an excavator when you have Taylor Rental, and also Joe Wilkinson does most of your town work, and they have excavators. Just trying to save some money, that's all.
Staff have a reaction?
Good afternoon, Joe Aberdale, Department of Public Works. I'm sorry? Sure. Joe Aberdale, Department of Public Works. Well, let me just start with the chipper. Thank you very much for approving it last year. We've been using it throughout the year this year, and we intend to continue. Second, the excavator. We're looking for a wheeled excavator with mobility, much like the town of Lee has, and is looking to upgrade to a larger one at this point. Over the past year to date, we've had rented in excess of $26,000 worth of rental fees for that type of machine through a contractor. This size machine is not available at Taylor Rental, and if it was in our barn, it would be able to be used all the time. For example, we had the ice storm late in the year. We turned around and actually brought our mini excavator out to Main Street, Great Barrington and Main Street, Housatonic, to help clear the ice. In a rental unit, we would not have that available for us all the time. And if you took the $250,000 and you took a 20-year bond out at 3 or 4%, you'd be paying about $18,000 a year for that in debt service. So the purchase of, we're renting it more than the purchase of the, we're paying more for rental than it would cost to purchase this unit, have it available to us 24/7, 365. One of my additional fears is that the town is not equipped for any substantial natural disaster from the Public Works equipment standpoint, and this would give us another element to help us in that situation.
Thank you. Seeing no motion to delete that item, I'll move on to the next item, which is held, which was number 16, street and bridge improvements. Question or comment? Can you come to the microphone?
Ananda Tim Payne, 139 Seacon Crossroad. Joe, my question is if you could just walk us through what you see as the priority improvements in this category that this budget line will be used for in the coming year.
Joe? Chris? Okay.
I can be happy to begin the discussion, and Joe can pipe in if I miss anything. The first major project in this larger price tag is North Plain Road, for which we have already a substantial grant. In fact, we're not borrowing any money for that, and that project is going to begin this year, a lot sooner than we thought, so that's a good thing. Other priority projects include Seacon Crossroad, and Joe's Public Works team and engineers have developed some excellent lower cost pavement preservation techniques and rehabilitation techniques. So what we originally thought was for a full length of Seacon Crossroad repaving exclusive of that Green River Bridge. We were looking at $5 to $6 million, I believe, right now, because of the preservation techniques and innovative pavement program that Joe's looked at. We're looking at about, I believe it's less than 2, Joe? Yeah, 1.3 for Seacon Crossroad. Other parts of the street program includes engineering to get us prepared for grants. Like I said, this year we have over $6 million in grants. That's because we do allocate funds in advance towards engineering and design so that we can write the grants and be competitive to get those. Joe, am I missing any large street culvert bridge projects?
Joe, you recognize?
You know, there's nothing large. Seacon Crossroad, and hopefully, depending when the bids come in, we'll be extending it over Round Hill would be the intent. But the approach, I just want to share this with everybody, the approach to the street rehabilitation, maintenance, and protection of our infrastructure is not just wait till it falls apart and repair it. You're going to see different techniques, like over the last couple of years, you've seen a lot of crack sealing. We're continuing that this year. We're going to do things like fog sealing, microchip sealing, things of that nature that add life to our roads at minimum expenses. So, for example, we're looking to do a sealer on Main Street at one point this summer that will add 5 years to the road versus waiting another 10 years and repaving it. So just so you know, there's a lot of different techniques that are out there nowadays that we're exploring, working with Mass Highway to do it.
Any other questions or comments on the roads item? There was also hold on number 17 on parks improvements. Question about that, please go to the microphone. I thought it was from over here. Am I wrong that there was a hold on item 17?
I'm Nora Fernandez, 115 Brush Hill Road. Actually, I'm not sure it's 17, but my question was about the $10 million. If that included the Brookside Bridge, because if he already has $6 million awarded, why then this is 10?
The Brookside Bridge issue is in Article 13. It's separate from this.
I know, but I just wanted to understand why we have 10 million here if he already has, he just said 6 million on awarded in grants, right?
Is your question whether the 6 million in grants that is mentioned in item 16
Yes.
is different from any money available for the Brookside Bridge or is included or something?
Yes.
Okay.
The grant funds that we have in hand are not for Brookside Bridge.
I know.
They're for North Plain Road, I believe, West Sheffield Road, and maybe some other things. The dollar amount for Brookside Bridge is not shown in this dollar amount here. It's entirely in Article 13.
Thank you for the clarification. Thank you.
If there are no other comments or questions about Article 5, Article 5, got to get this right. This is your break time. This requires a secret ballot and a 2/3 vote. We will use the red ballots. Please get up, go to the boxes in the mezzanine, drop off your ballot, talk to your neighbors briefly, and await my urgent call to return to order.
Does anyone need to drop Article 6?
Okay, we will continue now with Article 6, which is about the wastewater department operating budget. Is there a motion from the Finance Committee?
Voted that the town appropriate from the receipts of the wastewater treatment plant such sums of money necessary for the operation of the sewer division for the ensuing fiscal year for the purposes outlined below. Wastewater treatment plant, salaries, $570,802. Expenses, $994,550. Let me say that again. $994,000, right? $994,550. Insurance benefits, $291,326. Miscellaneous transfers, $351,053. Debt service, $1,014,830. Total wastewater treatment plant budget, $3,222,561.
Is there a second? Second. Motion made and seconded. Normally I run through this item by item, but I think we can probably dispense with it. Are there any questions or proposed changes to any of the items in the wastewater operating budget? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor, raise your cards. Thank you. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously at 308. Article 7.
Voted.
Capital authorization for the wastewater enterprise fund.
Voted that the sum of $1,150,000 is appropriated to pay costs of undertaking various capital projects and acquiring capital equipment in and for the wastewater department as follows. 1, retaining engineering services at an appropriate cost of $802,000, including the payment of all costs incidental and related thereto, and that to meet this appropriation, the town authorized the use of $802,000 of retained earnings in the Sewer Enterprise Fund. 2, obtaining services for CMOM, Capacity Management Operations and Maintenance, and infiltration inflow mitigation at an approximate cost of $248,000, including the payment of all costs incidental and related thereto, and that to meet this appropriation, the town authorized the use of $248,000 of retained earnings in the Sewer Enterprise Fund. 3, rehabilitating and/or replacing various sewers and manholes at an approximate cost of $100,000, including the payment of all costs incidental and related thereto, and that to meet this appropriation, the town authorized the use of $100,000 of retained earnings in the Sewer Enterprise Fund.
Is there a second? Second. Motion made and seconded. Any questions or comments about any aspect of the capital authorizations for the wastewater plant? Seeing none, and noting that they are not borrowing money, so this does not require a secret ballot. All those in favor, raise your cards. Thank you. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously at 310. Not quite. Okay, I'm sorry. Motion carries at 310. Article 8, Regional School District Assessment. Is there a motion from the Finance Committee?
Select Board.
Oh, from the select? Yes. A motion from the Select Board, I'm sorry.
Voted that the town raise and appropriate the sum of $22,184,337 for the operating assessment and $25,211 for the capital assessment, for a total FY26 assessment of $22,209,548 of the Berkshire Hills Regional School District.
There's a motion, has been seconded. Second. I believe that the school superintendent would like to make a statement on this, and you're recognized, Peter.
Great, thank you. I'm Peter Dillon, I'm the school superintendent. I'm going to run through some slides and tell you what we're doing and ask for your support. The mission of the school district is to ensure that all students are challenged through a wide range of experiences to become engaged, curious learners and problem solvers who effectively communicate, embrace diversity, and improve themselves and their community. We think we're doing a fine job of that. In terms of accomplishments this year, we have stable leadership, 3 new principals. They're all doing outstanding work. We continue to do deep work in teaching, learning, and assessment. Our students have had remarkable successes on stages, fields, courts, and in internships. In a very tough year to apply to colleges and post-secondary opportunities, our students have done remarkably well. I'll rattle off a few as examples, but we're still hearing from students as they make their final decisions. Several students are going on to UMass Amherst to study various forms of mechanical and chemical engineering. Several students are going to Westfield State. 2 students each are going to Middlebury, Tufts, and Northeastern. Students are going to Columbia, Yale, Vassar, Holy Cross, a real nice range. We've made significant progress on our high school building project, and we'll be talking to you about that more during the summer and the fall. We've added an additional vocational program in electricity at the high school, and that will hopefully open with our new school. And we've shifted to having no phones bell to bell in all our schools. And we're still working out some kinks there, but that's good. In terms of challenges, this was a very tough year for us connected to the budget, and it had a significant impact. And there's real uncertainty at the federal level tied to both policy and funding, and we're working through that. In terms of our budget priorities, we're trying very hard to provide a high-quality education for all our students, to provide a range of social emotional supports and to ensure equitable access for all students. When we talk about the budget, increases were really driven by 3 or 4 areas: contractual obligations, health insurance. It's the same health insurance that the town has, and historically we've had premium holidays which saved our employees money and the district, and there are no premium holidays planned for this year. The cost of services and the small number of students we pay tuition for to go off-site have gone up, and pretty obviously both utilities and transportation has gone up. When confronted with this, we worked really hard to make some reductions. We eliminated 9 staff positions, and that's a big deal. 6 of them are teacher lines, 3 of them are administrator lines. We reduced purchases, we reduced stipends, and we were able to reduce our investment in technology. In part, like the town, we're very successful at writing and being awarded grants. So we're able to shift some costs to technology for grants. For sort of how the assessment happens, and this is surprisingly misunderstood considering the number of times we talk about it. The assessment's tied to the population allocation, the percentage of district students divided by the number of students in each town, the minimum local contribution, and the net assessment. This next slide shows this year's budget this year's assessment to the 3 towns compared to last year. You'll notice in Great Barrington that the number of students goes down slightly from 653 to 620, and the percentage for Great Barrington is 74.6988%. Stockbridge, the numbers went down by 4, and West Stockbridge, the numbers went down by 3. Okay, sorry. The minimum local contribution is how the state computes what each town has to contribute, okay? Typically, our 3 towns contribute more than the minimum. The next slide. Last year's minimum local contribution in Great Barrington was $8,593,682, and this year it's $9,169,459. Stockbridge's went up, and West Stockbridge's went down. These are tied to the governor's budget, then the House budget comes out, then the Senate budget comes out, and then they get reconciled. The next slide. So the total to Great Barrington is $22,209,548, and you see the numbers for the other 2 towns. And you can go to the next slide, please. The total change for the assessment was 4.5% across the 3 towns or for the district, and Great Barrington's went up 5.55%. $1,168,676. West Stockbridge's went down because of the other factors I discussed. So that's it. I imagine people have some comments and things that they're wondering about, so I'll stay up here to be able to respond to those.
I'll leave you a little time for that. Before we get to that, Article 5, the secret ballot item was adopted by a vote of 266 yes to 41 no, and I'm announcing that at 3:18. Are there questions or comments on the school assessment?
Yeah, Modrick, 253 Long Pond Road. My comments are not directed at decreasing our educational opportunities for our students, but rather focusing on what appears to be a long-term issue where the amount of students per annum has been decreasing for many years. At this point, we're coming further down. The budget continues to rise, however, and when you look at how we compare to other school districts throughout Western Mass, as well as Pioneer Valley, we pay the most per student, period. There's no one close to us. Our budgetary numbers are not in our favor. the amount of teachers, or students per teacher rather, are at a high level. In other words, we have less students per teacher than anyone else around. And if you actually look at the state data and assess how the best schools in the state do, they have ratios of 12 to 13 students per teacher, while we are running around 9.3 to 1. So my concern is, in a setting of a decreasing enrollment for all of the school districts locally, but especially for Berkshire Hills, why are we having so much money spent on teachers, and why are we having so much money spent on the system when in fact we should be having less teachers because we have less enrollment? But actually, when you look at how many teachers have been present, in 2016 there were 548 students and there were 31.8 FTEs. In 2019 it was 530 students, 30.4 FTEs. Yet today in 25 we have 431 students and FTEs have risen to 36.3. So essentially our school district is making us pay a lot of money for a lot of teachers for very few students. And then when you look at where the students come from, I find it somewhat disheartening, especially as Dr. Dillon in the past has mentioned that choice in students are a careful blend of letting people come in, but not at the expense of increasing services and personnel. Yet obviously, since we're paying the most per student, we're not paying that amount for every student, but in a sum, we're doing it because we're importing a lot of students. And if you look at the data, you find that out of the students on choice in, that the total number is 255. So my understanding is we get paid roughly $5K per student in that category. Correct me if I'm wrong. And yet, with 255 students, and we're spending $30,000 per student to educate them, there's a big discrepancy. And since Great Barrington pays the most into the system, I really feel that this needs to be revisited, and the open-ended choice-in policy should probably not continue. And I'll stop there since I have the red light flashing at me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Charles Williamson, 48 Blue Hill Road. I've been up on this podium for 20 years complaining about this issue. School choice. Data from Peter Dillon. Okay. Charles Williamson, 48 Blue Hill Road. I've been talking about this for 20 years, school choice. Peter Dillon's zone number, we have 255 school choice students coming to Monument Mountain, and we get $5,000 for them, and it costs us $25,000 to educate them. So we're making up that $20,000 difference. We have 47 other students that we roughly have to pay $15,000 for. Using round numbers, this comes up close to $6 million, of which, as you saw from Peter Dillon's thing, we pay 75% of the school budget. And I went many years up to see our representative, Smitty Pignatelli, which I am glad he's gone. He was useless. We have a chance here now. We have Lee Davis as a representative, and you selectmen know her well. She was a selectman. It's time. This has been going on for over 60 years. We've been paying for other students to come here, and we're paying 75% of it. It's time for the state to either reimburse us the full dollars, or it's time for us to get out of school choice. And I know Mr. Dillon says, no, we can't keep on spending. We're spending $4 million of this $22 million, Great Barrington, we're spending $4 million to teach 17 other towns their children. It's wrong. There's no reason why I'm spending money to teach somebody else's children.
If you'd like to respond to the specific question about the school choice numbers, fine.
Or I'll wait.
Okay, wait till the end. I'll give you 2 minutes to wrap up at the end.
Good morning, Rich Mahoney, 74 Blue Hill Road, and also one of your representatives to the school committee, and I happen to be the chair of the finance committee. So I just want to give you a different shade on some of the numbers my neighbors shared with you earlier. So long and short, Peter's going to get into it. The school choice kids we bring in don't cost us a dime. They don't cost a thing. We already have the building. We already have the teachers. We take that in. The money comes in as income. 1.2 million of that income was used this year to offset your folks' taxes. We have cut school choice before, and your taxes went up. If we cut school choice again and don't have that revenue, there'll be no expenses to cut. There'll be no teachers we can fire. We can't cut the heating bill. We can't cut our retirees' benefits by telling the school choice students stay home. Expenses will not change really at all, but revenue will go way down and your tax bills will go way up. So that's one set of numbers. The second set of numbers is this DESE cost per student number that gets thrown around a lot from the keyboard crowd who do their research and do other blogging. What that number is, DESE does this raw number where they look at essentially our checkbook and see every dollar that went out of it for any reason from any source, divide it between the number of students we have and say that's this number. Now everyone keeps saying, that's the cost to you. That's the cost to you. That's not the cost to you. The funds that go out of our checkbook come from a lot of places. Big hunk of it is from you folks. In fact, in this fiscal year, that was about 28 million. We had about 1,200 students roughly. When you break it out into those numbers, the number comes down to about 23,000. A lot of money, very much on par with every other school district in the state. Another funny thing about that number is we're a regional school district. So we pay for everything ourselves. We're not a municipal school system like Pittsfield, Lenox, or Lee. So our employees are district employees. All their benefits are paid for us, by us. In other districts, oftentimes they're town employees. So their benefits are on the town ledger, not theirs, making that DESE number very much skewed one way or the other. Capital. A lot of places the towns own the schools and plow the parking lots and paint them, and that all goes on the town ledger. So this DESE number is fool's gold. People will look at it, I think now are intentionally doing it to kind of bash the schools and not really be honest with you folks. The Berkshire Hills budget is the most transparent thing you can ever look at and understand. You can see what we're spending and what we're spending it on and where the money's coming from. It's very easy math. Dr. Dillon is the most transparent public employee we've ever had. It drives me nuts. He answers everybody's calls. He's quick to answer everybody's responses. He spends too much time doing it. But the set of numbers that's being sold to you is just not correct. We're very much on par with what we're spending, and we are very much above par on the results we're getting from our students.
Thank you, Rich. Next.
Hi, Kate Van Olst, 24 Hart Street, Housatonic. I just wanted to say I see some hardworking teachers in the crowd today. Thank you for all the hard work that you do. And on behalf,
You're cutting into her time.
I'm fine with that. I'm looking around the room today, and though I see a few of us parents of children who are served by the school district, I don't see a ton. Shout out to the people juggling their children in order to be here. Yes, we do in Berkshire County and in rural communities across the country face shrinking, aging populations. However, I just want to add the piece of information that if you want to see that trend continue, you want your communities to shrink and you want your tax bases to get smaller, don't invest in schools or playgrounds or roads. And if you want your towns to grow and thrive and have a future, you have to invest in your schools and your emergency services and your libraries and your various committees that plan and execute wonderful activities for all of us. And also, you know, this is an issue that affects us financially in other ways, which is that a lot of our local business owners talk about the inability to hire and retain a workforce, right? And a lot of that is because people can't afford to move back to the community that they grew up in. And one thing that makes that possible is schools, high-quality schools where you can send your kids. And so I am asking you to invest in a future. And I really appreciate the work that Peter Dillon and the school committee do. Thank you.
Is there any other questions or comments on the school budget? Peter, if you'd like a minute or two to respond to the particular items raised that Rich might not have covered.
Sure. So I just wanted to share a couple numbers and then direct people to a couple places to find additional information. The total number of students from the 3 towns is 830. There are 255 choice students and 65 tuition students for a total of 1,150 students. At last Thursday's school committee meeting, the school committee discussed and voted on school choice. I shared a memo at that meeting that is on our website, and I'll make it more obvious, and I may even turn it into a op-ed or something for the local media so people have more context on it. But it goes into greater detail on what Rich was explaining. Thank you for your support of the schools. We really appreciate it.
Seeing no further comment, I'll call for a vote by show of hands on the assessment for the school district. All those in favor, raise your cards. Thank you. All those opposed? Motion carries at 3:31. Moving on to some things which I think will be quick. Let's hope they will be quick. Article 9, out-of-district vocational tuition and transportation. A motion by the Select Board.
Voted that the town raise and appropriate $135,000 to fund the fiscal year 2026 tuition and transportation costs for out-of-district vocational education in accordance with Chapter 74 of the Massachusetts General Laws.
Is there a second? Second. Motion made and seconded. Comments or questions on the money for vocational education? Seeing none, all in favor, raise your cards. Thank you. All opposed? Motion passes at 3:32. Article 10, funding for the Southern Berkshire Ambulance Squad. Motion from the Select Board.
Voted that the town appropriate $304,909.11 from free cash to support the operation of the Southern Berkshire Ambulance Service.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded to support the ambulance service. Are there questions or comments on this item? Yes.
Karen Smith, 5 Monument Valley Road. Can somebody from the ambulance department explain to me what $304,000 of our tax dollars supports for the ambulance company? Just details, please.
You would like an explanation from the beneficiary of what they're going to do with the money?
Yeah.
Is there someone here from the ambulance? Thank you.
Jim Santos, 9 Lovers Lane. I'm on the board of directors of the Southern Berkshire Ambulance. This past year, every year when I get up here, I keep saying that the EMS is in a critical situation. That's still a true statement. Last year, there were 2 main reasons that we had to go up by $304,000, or not that much, but went up quite a bit. And the 2 reasons are, number 1 is staffing. There is still a critical shortage of paramedics and EMTs. We need staff to run the ambulances. Last year, because of a shortage of staff, comparing the 223 number of calls to 224, we were down 362 transports, which worked out to about $217,000. Because of that shortage, we also had to increase our overtime by a great deal, which worked out to about $121,000. So right there, those 2 figures will give you the 304,000. But I can also stand here today for the first time in several years and keep my fingers crossed, and you too, please. We are making headway with getting new staff. We have been able to, we are a licensed training center at the Southern Berkshire Ambulance. We have a new training instructor, EMT instructor, and we have been, in the last 2 years, we've been running at least one, if not two EMT classes. So we have been getting slowly new EMTs and hiring them to work for us. We're also making headway with getting paramedics. We have two that have just graduated from the paramedic class out in Greenfield. They passed their exams and they are now in the process of going through orientation with us. We also have actually three more people going through what's called an advanced paramedic class with Action Ambulance in Pittsfield. Instead of the regular 18 to 20 month class, that's done in about, I want to say, 6 or 7. They are also doing well. And so once we get those folks on board, we are going to be sitting well with staff. Of course, that doesn't mean someone else is going to quit tomorrow, but it's looking good. That's important because we need those extra staff people to man extra ambulances. Last year, there were times, unfortunately, when we only had enough staff on certain days where we could only put one ambulance on the road. That hurts everybody, and that's not good. I see I have the red signal, so
Thank you very much. Any other questions on this item 10 about the ambulance service? Seeing none, all in favor of this amount, raise your hands, cards. Thank you. All opposed? Motion carries at 3:36. And now we need to do a little bit of parliamentary jujitsu. Apparently, through an oversight or a typographical error, in item 9, the intention had been among the budget writers to fund that from free cash rather than as an appropriation, raise an appropriate item. Therefore, what we need to do is reconsider that and re-vote it.
Mr. Moderator, I move to reconsider Article 9.
Motion is made and seconded. Is there a second? In favor of reconsidering Article 9, raise your cards. Thank you. Opposed? Very good. We are reconsidering Article 9. I don't believe we need to repeat the motion. Yes, we do need to repeat the motion with the correct language in it. Could I please have a motion for Article 9 with the correct language in it?
Yes. With apologies to Garfield, sorry, I wrote that wrong. Voted that the town raise from free cash a sum of $135,000 to fund fiscal year 2026 tuition and transportation costs for out-of-district vocational education in accordance with Chapter 74 of the Massachusetts General Laws.
Is there a second to this new motion? Made and seconded. Any comment about taking it from free cash instead? Seeing none, all in favor, raise your cards. Thank you. All opposed? Motion on reconsideration passes at 3:37. Article 11, authorize funding to the Unemployment Trust Fund. A motion from the Finance Committee.
Voted that the town appropriate $20,000 from free cash to deposit into the town's unemployment trust fund.
Is there a second? Second. I hear a second. Yes. Any questions or comments on this item? Seeing none, all in favor, raise your cards. Thank you. All opposed? Motion passes unanimously for what it's worth at 3:38. Article 12, funding the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. A motion from the Finance Committee.
Voted that the town appropriate and transfer $71,747.14 from the short-term rental special revenue fund to the Great Barrington Affordable Housing Trust Fund.
Is there a second? Motion has been made and seconded. Questions or comment on this transfer? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your cards. Thank you. All opposed? Motion, nope, I think I see an opponent. Motion passes at 339. Article 13, the one you've all been waiting for, authorizing funding for the temporary Brookside Road Bridge and/or related emergency facilities. I'm expecting a motion from the Select Board.
Voted that the town appropriate $3 million for the payment of costs related to the construction and installation of a temporary bridge on the Brookside Road over the Housatonic River or for the construction of temporary emergency services facilities on or near Brookside Road, and for the payment of all other costs incidental and related thereto, and that to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the Select Board, is authorized to borrow said amount under and pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 7(1), or any other authority, and to issue bonds or notes of the town, therefore, provided, however, that any such borrowing shall be contingent upon approval at an election of a Proposition 2.5 debt exclusion.
Is there a second? Motion has been made and seconded. Several people have told me already that they want to speak on this. In particular, I understand that Joe Aberdale was going to describe the plan. Am I wrong? Maybe not. Well, debate.
Joe Aberdale, Department of Public Works, Great Barrington. We all know we had an unfortunate situation where we were, the Brookside Road Bridge was closed in May. We did have plans to continue a well-thought-out process that the town had in place before that, but we didn't make it in time. So we were challenged with how do we accommodate, putting a bridge in a temporary bridge or something like of some sorts. And it's hard to see this, but we looked at three basic options. The third one down is actually the option where Mass Highway is going to step up to the plate and put a new bridge in for us. The unfortunate thing is that it takes 8 to 10 years. And I know it seems a lot. We are government, but there's extensive permitting, land issues, things of that nature that have to take place. So Mass Highway is actively working on it, and they're still focusing on their targets. So in the meantime, we in Town Hall put our heads together and said, hey, what can we do? Can we turn around and do like we did on Division Street, take the bridge out, put a temporary in, and spend another $4 or $5 million doing that? That option involves permitting, river work, things of that nature, which then, if we were successful doing that, we would put a temporary bridge in there. It'd be there for a couple years, and then the state would take it down and rebuild the bridge. So in a short period of time, the long period of time that you spent engineering it, approving it, permitting it, you're going to use it for 2 or 3 years, and it's going to come out. So then we looked at a couple other options, and what we came down to is if we can take a temporary bridge like we did at Division Street and slide it through the existing bridge. There was a lot of engineering challenges that we finally worked through, and it appears doable. So that's the option that the money is requested for in the process, or in the article. So the other option that was looked at was to try to repair the bridge, but there's just way too many unknowns that we would get into and just keep putting money in. So we kind of set that one aside because there was no definitive end that an engineer could turn around and earmark. So that's the option that's on the table, or it also has provisions for emergency service items on the other side of the bridge. So if there's any additional questions, I don't want to spend a lot of time, but I just wanted to share with everybody here that we work closely at Town Hall to try to accommodate the needs and give you, the voters, the decision to make here if we spend the money to do it or not.
Thank you. If you have a question, please come to the microphone and direct the question to me. I'm sure there are others who wish to speak about this.
Hi, I'm Merle Duskin-Kalis. My address is 103 Brush Hill Road. And thank you, Steve, for making the motion. And so many thanks to the Select Board, the Finance Committee, Michael Wise, Chris Rembo, Joe Aberdale, Josh Risen, and to Lee Davis as well. You have all been so helpful to the Brookside Neighbors Group, and we appreciate so much all of your help. Thank you. Why are we here today? Well, the state won't even begin building the new bridge until 8 to 10 years after it was closed. In 2 years, the Kellogg Street Bridge in Sheffield will close, and it will be closed for a period until they rebuild that, which will bring all the residents back to going all the ways down to the Maple Avenue Bridge. And the Maple Avenue Bridge, once it's holding all the traffic from the Kellogg Road Bridge and the Brookside Bridge, it's already rated fair and poor in some categories. So it can't really be risked that that bridge will fail. Also, the third compelling reason is the state, after the Butternut Fire, the state said under no circumstances can that bridge be open, even in an emergency. So that's why we're all here today. And also, I'd like to remind you that it's not about a detour. It's about safety. We residents of Brookside Road, Brush Hill Road, East Sheffield Road, and Home Road, a lot of us are aging, and the increased ambulance time, or the police department time, or the fire department time is a huge concern for all of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Other comments, observations?
My name is Paul Iserlis. I'm the director of Eisner Camp at 53 Brookside Road in Great Barrington. And I'm here just to talk about the impact that this bridge has on our camp and our retreat center. In addition to having over 800 people all summer, we also house retreats all throughout the year where we have anywhere from about 100 to 300 people almost 7 days a week there. The increased time that it takes for emergency services is obviously a major concern of us, and we want to make sure we're always putting the health and safety of our campers and staff as our first priority. In addition to that, just yesterday I actually met with members from the fire department and Southern Ambulance because they also expressed the same concerns that we did to try to figure out the best plan possible for our camp and all the residents on our side of the bridge, and just feel it's incredibly important, not just for the homeowners, but also for all the campers and staff that are relying on this health and safety. So thank you.
Thank you. Next up.
Hi, my name is Meredith Smythe, and I live at 53 Brookside Road. And I'm here to urge everyone today in the strongest possible terms to vote yes for this amendment. I wanted to put into context, I know a lot of if and when an emergency happens, and I just wanted to share everyone about my experience with an emergency. We know about the brush fire that happened last fall, as that touched a lot of people. Myself and others were watching if we needed to evacuate, watch it come towards property lines and figuring out what our next steps would be. But then this January, my 14-month-old son had a seizure that impacted his breathing. We called 911, and in figuring out the fastest way to get help for my son, dispatch instructed me to run across the bridge carrying my baby in my arms to meet the ambulance. Timing was everything, and there was no other option. I am young, I am able, and I was a small child. I don't even want to think what that could be like in a different circumstance. And I also reflect that we were lucky that there was no snow at that point in January. Just 2 weeks later, we had a big snow and ice storm, and that bridge I would not have been able to do that at that time. I know that this is a big number, and I know that they've shared the FAQ about how that number breaks down per resident and that the option of selling the temporary bridge after it passes. What I guess I want to stress is that this is something that isn't only an option for right now, and if it passes, it's no longer going to be an option. It will be in 8 to 10 years. We need you to take action now and vote yes. We must ensure that fire trucks and ambulances can reach all residents in a timely manner. Without a temporary bridge, we risk lives. We cannot afford that gamble, and my family cannot afford that gamble, nor can any of the others who live up those roads. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gregory Lippard, 99 Brush Hill Road. Can we go to the slide that has the numbers on it? Is that possible?
Can you put the slide back up that had numbers on it?
Yeah, that's pretty good. So I tried to answer the question, I asked the question, what would it actually cost us, the taxpayers? And the town can't tell us that because they haven't gone and gotten the loan yet, but being a numbers guy, I tried to do some conservative calculations. I said, well, let's say they borrowed the full $3 million. It works out that the average citizen, let's just say there were no other offsetting reductions, and we passed all of that cost on to us. The average citizen would see property taxes increase by about 0.7%. And the way I calculated that is if you took a 15-year amortization, obviously a 20-year amortization, the cost would be even lower. But on 15 years, I took the high end of a muni rate, 5%, and the way it works out, you can see the numbers there, it's about $285,000, and as a percentage of the total budget, it works out for the average taxpayer about $11 a quarter. There are scenarios where that comes down. Apparently, the state is potentially going to allocate $500,000 to this. There's also the Division Street Bridge that potentially could be sold. So depending on how all this is done, I've also heard $3 million is at the high end of the range. So potentially it's a much lower amount, and then as you can see, it's an even lower. And this is for an average, property taxes. If your annual property taxes are $6,000. So if you're paying $3,000, it would be half of that. If you're paying $12,000, it would be double. This is just to give some context. You heard the emotional part of it. We went through the brush fires, and our house was about a football field length from the fires, and was saved by some heroic volunteer firefighters. But it would have burned down because the trucks wouldn't have made it in time. So beyond all the emotional reasons to do this for our safety and security, the money is really going to be very, very small, and we're going to have that bridge as an asset. At the end of the period, we could sell the bridge, we could use it somewhere else in the town where we need to. So it seems like a very compelling value proposition. Thank you.
Thank you. We have heard now from 4 speakers in favor of the project. Is there anybody who has a question they'd like to present to the town staff about this, public safety staff or otherwise? Does anybody want to speak in opposition to the project, just to be sure you have all bases covered?
Charles Williamson, 48 Blue Hill Road. I just want to bring up 2 things about the bridge. I think everybody's for it, but I believe the state should pay for it, but other than asking the state to help us, which they won't. When I was in the service, we had tank retrievers with expandable bridges on there. I'm just wondering if somebody runs something by our state senator to see if we could get an Army surplus temporary bridge. When we're done with it, return it to the military. There's no reason for us to own it. Let's give it back to the government. They'll just waste it.
Perpetual source of good ideas is the town meeting. Continue. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Jim Fagan. I live at 101 Brush Hill Road. I'm a retired pediatrician, and as a physician, I'm very aware of medical issues and concerns that arise in communities such as ours. Medical emergencies are inevitable, but the outcome of a medical emergency is not inevitable. The response time for EMTs arriving at the scene of an emergency strongly influences whether or not the patient will survive, especially if the individual is encountering a cardiac event. The time interval is critical with regard to successful stabilization and ultimate recovery of the patient. Survival from cardiac arrest is all about the time interval for initiating defibrillation and administration of epinephrine and antiarrhythmic medications. Any delay with regard to EMT response time may significantly compromise the effectiveness of resuscitation procedures, including defibrillation. Survival for patients who have suffered a cardiac arrest decreases 10% for every minute delay in defibrillation, which is why having EMT arrive at the scene as quickly as possible can make the difference between life and death. In addition to cardiac events, falls and other traumatic injuries are commonly encountered, especially in an older population, and many of these injuries will require immediate medical assistance. As a pediatrician, I am also very concerned about the children who live on Brush Hill Road, as well as the hundreds of kids who stay at Camp Eisner during the summer months. In the event of a medical emergency involving a child, it is absolutely critical that medical assistance arrive very quickly. Any delay in initiating medical intervention can result in a terrible outcome. Knowing that emergency assistance will be able to arrive within minutes of a 911 call is critical to the well-being of our community. This is why we need a temporary bridge now, and this is why we need you to please vote yes for a temporary bridge. I can assure all of you that if this were your street, your community, we would be very supportive of you. Thank you.
Chief Shorty.
Paul Storty, Chief of Police. Just a couple quick comments. When the bridge originally closed last year, we were faced with a few, obviously, concerns. I spoke with the fire chief, EMS, and Joe Aberdale, because time is critical in any type of emergency situation. And so during our conversations, we posed Joe to probably come up with a solution, or try to come up with a different solution on how we can get some type of temporary thing in. So he's given us an option here today to look at, to consider. So I'm just going to ask you, when you do vote today, just look at it through the lens of, one, if you were faced with a critical situation or a medical event or something that you needed help right away, and you know it was going to be delayed, how will that affect you? And secondly, if you were one of the residents on that side of the bridge, how would you feel about your safety and security? That's all. Thank you.
Chris, can you
If
go to
there's
the next
anything that
slide?
has not been said, okay?
Hi, my name is Jade Madrone at 96 Brush Hill. I just wanted to share one more very succinct personal story. My oldest daughter is 3, and for her birth, I decided to have a home birth, and that was obviously before the bridge closure. I hemorrhaged, and emergency services were able to get to my house and take me to the hospital very quickly and get Pitocin, and it turned out that I had 40% blood loss, and had I lost any more blood, the doctors said I would likely have organ failure or a heart attack and not make it. And so this is just like a real situation. Had this happened after the bridge closure, had it been delayed twice as much time, 30 minutes instead of 5 minutes, or if someone had tried to put me down the stairs because an ambulance couldn't get there, I might not be here. So it's just a real situation, not just numbers. Thank you.
Thank you. I sense, last one.
I'll be brief. Scott Turner, Fire Chief. Just to throw around the numbers when it comes to response times. When the bridge was open, we were making it on that side of the bridge, on Brush Hill area, in 5 to 7 minutes. Once the bridge closed, that brought it up between 12 and 15 minutes. And if the Kellogg Road Bridge were to close and we were still without a bridge, we're looking at 30 minutes. And everybody's mentioned that time is critical when it comes to fire and medical emergencies, which the fire department responds to.
Thank you. Well, as a technical matter, I require people to go to the microphone to move to call the question, but I can do that myself. And I think we've heard everything that's going to be said. 30 seconds.
Yes.
it's a technicality. If we just want the article to read to Brookside Road Bridge, stop there, not as an alternative of an emergency facility related building. Yes?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Not sure what. I'm going to call for the vote now. This will require a secret ballot because we're borrowing money and requires a 2/3 vote. The ballot that is coming up, I see blue. So go to the ballot boxes, make your vote, and please come back. We have several interesting things to be done yet, and I think we're going to be out of here by 5. Okay, proceeding with the next item on the agenda is Article 14, authorizing free cash to reduce the tax levy.
Article 14.
Is there a motion from the Finance Committee?
Article 14 voted that the town appropriate $3,931,723 from free cash to reduce the tax levy for fiscal year 2026.
Is there a second?
Second.
On this annual motion to reduce the taxes via the free cash. Any discussion or questions? Seeing none, all in favor, raise your cards. Thank you. All opposed? Motion passes unanimously at 404. Article 15, paying prior fiscal year invoices. A motion by the Finance Committee.
Voted that the town authorize the payment of prior fiscal year invoices from the fiscal year 25 operating budgets of the building inspector, Department of Public Works, and wastewater departments in the amounts set forth below. Building inspector, $17,106 to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, account number 01241-52000. Department of Public Works, $1,250 to Hillman Consulting, account number 01422-58541. $279.93 to Housatonic Water Works Company, account number 01422-52115, $84.19 to NAPA Auto Parts, account number 01422-52450, $16.02 to NAPA Auto Parts, account number 01422-52450. And for wastewater, $200 to Lee Police Department, account number 60442-53085.
Is there a second? Motion has been made and seconded. Are there questions about these items or comments on it? This is one of the weird things. This requires a 4/5 vote, which is an odd number. I can't call a 4/5 vote, but I can call a unanimous vote. That's a hint. All in favor of the motion on Article 15, raise your cards. Put your cards down. All opposed, raise your cards. Thank you for being merciful. The motion passes unanimously at 406. Article 16, rescinding old borrowing authorizations. A motion from the Finance Committee.
Voted that the town hereby rescinds the following amounts that have been authorized to be borrowed by vote of town meeting, but which are no longer needed for the purposes for which they were initially approved. The categories are unused amount, date of approval, warrant article, original purpose. $20,300 on May 7th, 2018, warrant article 4, various building improvements, parentheses, Dewey Building Carpet, close paren. $21,000, May 6th, 2019, warrant article 7, various building improvements, town hall plumbing. $1,677,000 on May 6th, 2019, warrant article 7, various street, road and sidewalk improvements, parentheses, Division Street Bridge, close paren. $271,027, June 6th, 2022. Warrant Article 5, various street and bridge improvements, parentheses, Senior Center parking lot, close paren. $2,000. On June 6th, 2022, warrant Article 5, various building improvements, parentheses, Ramsdale Library ADA compliance, close parens. $12,266 on May 1st, 2023, Article 4, DPW loader and attachments. $8,100, May 1st, 2023, warrant Article 4, DPW excavator.
Is there a second? Second. Motion made and seconded. Any questions about these items, which amount to not spending money? Seeing none, all in favor, raise your cards. Thank you. All opposed? Motion carries at 408. Article 17, the Community Preservation Act reserves. Before you get started, Karen, the results on Article 13, it carried by a vote of 281 to 23.
I got it. Ooh, that was not. I'm good. I can see. Karen Smith, 5 Monument Valley Road. I'm chair of the CPA. Article 17, that the town appropriate from the Community Preservation Fund annual revenues the following amounts recommended by the Community Preservation Committee for committee administrative expenses in FY26 and for payment of debt service and costs related thereto for the Memorial Field Improvement Project, which is now done, authorized by the vote on June 6, 2022 annual town meeting, and reserved for future appropriation for the community preservation projects the following reserve amounts, with each item to be considered as a separate appropriation. Reserves from FY26 historic reserves, 67.5. From FY26 revenues for community housing service reserve, 67.5. FY26 reserves for open space and recreation reserve, 0. I'm not sure, Mr. Rembolt, why that's, I think we've already done it.
Commentary isn't part of the motion.
Oh,
Go
I
ahead.
apologize. Appropriation from FY26 for debt service on the Memorial Field Project, $55,265, and any cost related thereto. From FY26 revenues for administrative expenses, $12,000. Balance of FY26 revenues for FY26 budgeted reserve, $472,735.
If there is a motion and second, is there an explanation of the CPA things as usual? It looks like somebody's creeping up to Mike to give it.
Good evening. I am chair of the Community Preservation Committee, which is an appointed board that oversees the implementation of CPA for the town. It was adopted in Great Barrington in 2012. Funds are raised by a surcharge on property tax bills and are supplemented each year by the state. In FY25, the CPA cost for a median value home was approximately $158. Low and moderate income seniors can apply for an exemption from the CPA surcharge. Next slide, please. Since we began making CPA grants in FY 2016, a total of $8 million has been awarded to 83 projects, creating some 170 units of affordable housing, preserving numerous historic sites and prominent buildings, conserving hundreds of acres of open space, creating trails, and rehabilitating parks. Next slide. As usual, at town meeting, there are 2 CPA articles before the voters, Articles 17 and 18. Article 17 is, as usual, the housekeeping or bookkeeping article that ensures the town meet the requirements for the state CPA law. The law stipulates that the town must spend or reserve a minimum of 10% to each of the 3 CPA categories. The money stays in these categories until it is spent for that purpose. Finally, We recommend also allocating an amount for administrative costs, which includes legal costs, staff support, and supplies. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions about this housekeeping article for the CPA? Seeing none, all in favor, raise your cards. Thank you. All opposed? Motion passes at 413. Article 18 is the particular project. Is there a motion?
That the town appropriate from the Community Preservation Fund for FY26 from the fund balance the following amounts recommended by the Community Preservation Committee, with each item to be considered as a separate appropriation. Affordable housing. The town, number one, Affordable Housing Trust of $375,000. Number two, the Marlboro Block Realty for $150,000, totaling $525,000. Historic Resources. The Unitarian Universalist Meeting of South Berkshire, $54,000. The Mason Library Clamshell Canopy, $146,000. The Mason Library Exterior Sconces, $49,000, totaling $249,000. Open Space and Recreation. Berkshire Natural Resources Council Trail Development, $24,800. The Town Park Equipment, town-wide, $107,000. Open Space and Recreation total, $131,800. Total appropriation, $905,800.
Motion is made and seconded. I take it the source of the appropriations is not necessarily part of your motion?
The source of the
The
appropriations.
table I have for your motion includes a column for the source of appropriations. I don't know if you intended that to be part of the motion or not.
It's not part of the motion.
Okay. Let us say that the motion you are making is as printed in the warrant. Very good.
Okay.
I'm going to go through these one by one like we did for the budget, and let me know if there is a hold or a question about one of them, and we'll come back to it. Number one, Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Number two, Marble Block Realty. Number three, Unitarian Universalist Meeting of South Berkshire. Number four, Mason Library Clamshell. Number five, Mason Library Exterior Sconces. Number six, BNRC Trail. Number seven, Park Equipment Townwide. Seeing no questions or comments, I guess we're ready to vote on these. The majority vote, all in favor, raise your cards. Thank you, all opposed. Vote carries, not unanimously, I see you, Andy, at 415. Article 19, motion by the Select Board concerning some property tax exemptions and cost of living adjustments.
Voted that the town accept 17D of Section 5 of Chapter 59 of the General Laws, Clause 41D of Section 5 of Chapter 59 of General Laws, and Clause 22I of Section 5 of Chapter 59 of the General Laws, as set forth in Article 19 of the warrant for this town meeting, with such acceptance clauses to be effected with applicable taxes exemptions granted for any fiscal year beginning on or after July 1st, 2025.
Motion has been made and seconded. Are there any questions about this one? I'm a lawyer and I ask questions about this one.
Karen Smith, 5 Monument Valley Road. As a cursory reading of this, I'm 73. Do I get to exempt my property tax? Is that what this is saying?
Would somebody on the staff like to explain what's the background of these things?
The assessor is taking the mic.
Oh, you're going to explain it. Great.
Hi, I'm Ross DeVore, I'm the assessor. Basically what we're doing is we're trying to pass.
Speak right into the microphone, otherwise you can't
We're proposing 2 additional senior exemptions, a 17D and a 41D. Each one of those will allow the the senior exemptions to increase automatically by COLA, which is sent down by the state. The 17D is an easier one to qualify for. It's not a lot of money, but it's better than nothing, and we're just trying to provide 2 additional exemptions to help the seniors. That's all they're about.
Would,
Doesn't answer the question.
well, he did his best. Chris, do you want to?
So you can
Yes.
apply for a senior exemption.
I'm recognizing the town manager to continue.
The 17D exemption is a $175 exemption. The 41D is $1,000. And they, as the assessor explained, they can rise with the cost of living. Is that right, Ross?
Yes, yes.
I'm going to take my moderator hat off for just a second. There are several exemptions available in state law. They're not very big usually, applying mostly to senior citizens, and this one will expand it some. They've been there for a while. It's a matter for towns to decide whether to accept them. They depend upon income and assets. These things change. They are complicated. They all fit together in weird ways. This is one of them.
If I may, so some of these exemptions already exist just by virtue of state law. So seniors and veterans can already take some of these exemptions. These are additional ones or tweaks to those state laws that the town that we're putting before you to vote. For example, to increase it slightly or to let it increase every year by cost of living. So these are tweaks to exemptions that exist. They don't cost the town too much in terms of foregone revenue. A lot of it is actually reimbursed to the town, about half of it in the next year. So again, these are existing laws and existing partial property tax exemptions for seniors and veterans. We're asking you if you would like to tweak them slightly as we've discussed.
Chris, can you clarify the...
Name and address, please.
Ananda Timpain, 139 Seacon Crossroad. Chris, can you clarify what qualifies somebody? Is it age only, or are there additional qualifying factors?
The assessor, please.
It's age and income. That's what you need, age and income.
Is there any other?
Ellen Lahr, Pine Street, Housatonic. I'm not sure if I'm reading this right, but it doesn't look like single seniors are eligible for this exemption. Am I reading that right? Only a surviving spouse or minor children?
A question about the technical application of this particular tweak to the particular exemptions. Okay. Ross?
Yes, I mean, you can be single, you can be married. It's just whether age and income.
Any further questions? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, raise your cards. Thank you. All opposed? Motion carries, not unanimously, at 421. Article 20, tax title payment agreements, a bylaw proposal. A motion from the Select Board.
Voted that the town adopt a new bylaw as Article 2 of Chapter 158 of the Town Code, authorizing the town treasurer to enter into tax title payment agreements for Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 60, Section 62A, as set forth in Article 20 of the warrant for this town meeting.
Motion made and seconded to adopt this bylaw on tax title payment agreements. Other questions or comments on it? Seeing none, all in favor, raise your cards. Thank you. All opposed? Motion passes at 421. Article 21, accepting a state law about abandoned funds. A motion from the Select Board.
Voted that the town accept Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 200A, Section 9A, as set forth in Article 21 of the warrant for this town meeting.
Is there a second? Motion made and seconded about accepting law on abandoned funds. Are there questions about this one? Seeing none, all in favor, raise your cards. All opposed? Motion carries. That's 422. Article 2 that 22, I've been looking forward to this all day because I want to say the word common vittler license fees. Is there a motion?
To see if the town will vote to accept Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 200A, Section 9A. Nope, sorry. Article 22. Fee for common victulars licenses, hereby referred to as common vic. To see if the town will vote to increase the license fee for a common victular license from $25 to $100 in accordance with Section 2 of Chapter 140 of the general laws, or take any other action relative thereto.
You just read the warrant article. You just read the warrant article.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. You're going to make me say this again. To see that the town increase the license fee for common, voted to see that the town increase the license fee for a common victular license from $25 to $100 in accordance with Section 2 of Chapter 140 of the general laws. Thank you, David.
Food. Restaurants. Any other questions about victualler, which is actually pronounced vittler? Seeing none, all in favor, raise your cards. Thank you. All opposed? Motion passes at 424. And now we get to 3 zoning items. Article 23, a bylaw on the residential cluster development. Is there a motion from the planning board?
Voted that the town amend the zoning bylaw by deleting existing section 8.5 planned residential unit development, or unit residential development in its entirety, deleting existing row A9 planned unit residential development from section 3.1.4, the table of use regulations, and deleting the definition of planned unit residential development from section 11, and by inserting a new section 8.5 to be known as residential cluster development, and inserting a new A9 residential cluster development into section 3.1.4, the table of use regulations is set forth in Article 23 of the warrant for this town meeting.
Is there a second? Second. Motion has been made and seconded. Does the planning board have an explanation of what it's about here?
We do. And as part of our report, I'd like to take just 1 minute, really, to remind some of you and introduce the rest of you to what the process is to enact a zoning bylaw amendment. First, let me understand that these comments relate only to zoning bylaw and not to general or administrative and other bylaws that might be voted. And as you can see, amendments for zoning bylaws, all the 3 amendments this year originated at the planning board, but zoning bylaw amendments can also originate from the select board or from citizens or from homeowners. All zoning bylaw amendments, regardless of how they're introduced, go through a public hearing for the planning board, which we held March 13th this year. The plan board then presents to town meeting, which is what we're doing now, and then town meeting, unlike other amendments, zoning bylaw amendments typically require 2/3 vote, although there are some that may require a simple majority if they're housing related. Allow me to turn over to Jackie Kane, who's going to explain Article 23.
Okay, I recognize Jackie.
Hi, excuse me. I'm Jackie Kane, 72 Seacon Cross Road, Associate Member of the Planning Board. So Article 23, Residential Cluster Development, RCD. This article was drafted by the Planning Board to replace the Planned Unit Residential Development, PURD, regulations of the zoning bylaw. It's an existing section 8.5. The board discussed the PURD regulations, including their failure to meet its stated purposes. The PURD is essentially unnecessarily complex, does not require compact residential development of smaller, less costly homes, and does not facilitate the construction of infrastructure in an efficient manner. In its place, the board proposes a new zone, called Residential Cluster Development, RCD. Under this proposal, RCD, projects of 4 or more dwelling units will be allowed by right if the units are modest in size, clustered together with clustered non-intrusive parking, if the infrastructure is developed efficiently, and if open space is provided by clustering development is provided. By clustering development and limiting homes to smaller sizes, the development can be built more efficiently and cost-effectively. The Planning Board proposes this article as part of the town's overall goal to provide a variety of housing opportunities at a range of costs and utilize developable land efficiently. And for these reasons, the board voted unanimously to recommend that the town approve this article. Now we have a couple more slides that you can look at. This is what zoning allows versus what we need. So basically, this is a 1 acre lot in a R2 zone, which allows an 87, this is not here, allows an 87 square foot McMansion. If 2 stories, 17,400 square feet by right. What we need are modest homes and more of them. The footprint of 1 McMansion could support 6 1,200 square foot homes instead. This is what we are hoping we'll have. If you see the first part of the residential cluster development in the whatever, I'm sorry. The purpose of the residential cluster RCD section of the zoning bylaws is provide dimensional standards, open space and parking requirements, and design guidelines that will foster the development of smaller, modestly sized residential units clustered around or near common open space. So if you want to see more detailed information, please see our warrant. Thank you.
I believe we have an amendment to be proposed. Thank you for actually printing it out in advance and giving it to me just like we asked.
Fred Clark, 388 Park Street North. I wish to make an amendment to Article 23, Section 8.5.4, Paragraph 5. The amendment is by deleting in its entirety the phrase, quote, "and the maximum distance between any 2 abutting units within a cluster shall not be more than 20 feet. The revised amendment, if this is accepted, would read cluster requirement. Dwelling units shall be clustered in groups of at least 4, period. Second, please.
An amendment has been proposed to this paragraph of the item in your warrant. Is there a second to the proposed amendment?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Fred, would you like to explain your amendment?
Yes, I'm generally in favor of this change to the plan unit development. I think it's going to be really good. As Jackie mentioned, it's going to make land use more efficient. It's going to foster much more ability to develop some difficult land. However, this amendment, the underlying proposal is for 4 units to 60 units. And that's going to take over a vast number of, that's going to cover a vast number of different parcels of different sizes from under an acre to many, many acres. The planning board guidelines are to keep 1/3 open space collected and to cluster the development. Those are great ideas. However, the planning board, in my view, overstepped by imposing a design issue instead of just setting the stage for development by saying that the buildings have to be no more than 20 feet apart. If there's a sidewalk between 2 buildings, that means there's only about 8 feet of personal space. This residential cluster development will cover rental units like the one on South Main Street that was built a couple of years ago, but also ownership property, an HOA. Typically with an HOA, we make in the documents personal space around the owned unit, the condo unit that somebody is required. you could have as little as 8 feet under this scenario of your own personal space. The amendment keeps the cluster requirement. It keeps the planned space requirement. And any project under this will go through site plan review with the planning board. It keeps that idea of clustering, but it allows a level of flexibility. It allows a level of creativity. Under the original underlying proposal, you couldn't have a courtyard where the 20 feet is, in front of the building. It assumes in the underlying proposal that 20 feet is between buildings. I think that we need the flexibility. We still have the idea of clustering. Thank you.
Does anyone from the planning board want to respond to the proposed amendment?
Yeah, Malcolm Fick, 1 Maplewood Avenue. I think if you adopt this amendment, you're eliminating cluster from the bylaw, because that is clusters, the 20 feet between the houses. And we did debate this for quite some time in the planning board. And if you read it carefully, it says that it's at least 4. You may have up to 60. You could have 15 clusters of 4. And there doesn't have to be 20 feet between the clusters. There has to be 20 feet between the houses that are clustered. I do believe the clustering is important for this type of development, and I think that having a limitation in the distance between the houses within a cluster is also important. It defines what a cluster is.
Other questions or comments on the proposed amendment to delete this distance requirement?
I just have a question. As Pedro Pachano at 5 Abbey Hill, I'm vice chair of the planning board. I don't really understand what the amendment is. Can we reread it and maybe get an explanation?
The amendment, which Fred read, for paragraph 8.5.4 of the draft that's in the warrant, on density and dimension requirements, it would read, number 5, cluster requirement, dwelling units shall be clustered in groups of at least 4, period. The effect is to delete the last clause in the item that's in the warrant.
So if I understand correctly, the amendment proposes to do what the planning board is already proposing, which is to cluster it in minimum of 4, and doesn't set any requirements between units?
It deletes the word in the warrant after the word 4, period. That's what it does.
And I would ask that we vote against it because we need the limits between the units.
Any other?
The question why I heard, because the whole purpose of the article is to cluster development, is to create these types of developments that are sometimes more desirable, they're cheaper to build, they create community. It's not unlike what we have in Housatonic or parts of the Hill or even parts of my neighborhood, which is 1 acre lots. So it's really not, what we're proposing is not really uncommon in town already. There's just no avenue for somebody wishing to do this either on their private lot or somebody to come in and do a development, to do this type of development. Also, the purpose also is to have less land that we put buildings on, less lands that we have pavement on, more permeable surfaces and more open space for the people who live around these developments to enjoy.
Further comments on the amendment, which is to eliminate this distance requirement from this clause. That's what's on the floor right now.
Hi, I'm Mike Gallerstein, 83 Hurlburt Road. First, I want to say I really appreciate the planning board and Pedro making it easier for developers to build more housing. I think we all agree that we need that. I think, though, as my other neighbor said about this amendment, I think that's a good idea. I think that the slide before that showed the McMansion versus this new cluster is a little bit of a red herring, because we do have a PURD that allows cluster development or allows more development than a single-family development. And I love this idea, though I think the planning board got a little bit over in saying to developers, this is what you should do, and we know better. For instance, if developers wanted to build smaller houses closer together, they can do that. For us to tell them, you have to build houses that are no bigger than 1,200 square feet, they must be less than 20 feet. Like, yes, we may make houses that are less affordable, but we also just may make no houses, which I don't think is what we're looking for. So for that reason, I love this idea, but I'd rather go back and be less restrictive.
Other comments on the amendment to eliminate the 20-foot item?
Hi, I'm Margaret McTeague. I live at 145 Castle Hill Avenue. And I guess my concern is I'm wondering if there's a maximum of these units that would be built. And I don't know if anybody else is aware of this, but a lot of young people, if they're teachers, like our niece and her husband, they wouldn't be able to move to Great Barrington because their income as teachers would not afford that. And I mean, maybe if they both keep their jobs, they could. But if they only had one job and it's teaching, they would not be able to live here. So I'm concerned about having more affordable housing and also protecting the land and having, depending on where the space is, the lands are, having a certain percentage of environmentally protected land and as much as possible affordable housing with environmentally sound building. So I just want to make sure those are addressed. I want to know if there's maximum units. There doesn't seem to be a maximum unit per that I've heard. I don't know. Can you clarify that?
Yes. Would someone from the planning board like to clarify whether there is a maximum number of units elsewhere in this proposal? This is a yes or no.
Yes, there is.
Thank you.
The number is 60. But I want to remind everybody sitting in the room that if I just may.
No, Pedro. More comments on the elimination of the 20-foot item?
Jorge Adrian Alcala, 139 Alfred Road. If I don't exactly understand why the amendment proposed to eliminate the spacing requirement entirely. If you eliminate the requirement entirely for a maximum distance between houses, how is that a cluster? If you don't want clusters, I would say just perhaps vote down the initial article. But to me, the amendment doesn't make sense. You know, if I can put 4 houses 400 feet apart on a parcel, can I call that a cluster? I think by this amendment I could, and I don't think that's right. I urge people to vote against the amendment.
Thank you. I see 3 people I haven't heard from yet speaking on the amendment. No further discussion of the amendment. The amendment is to delete the last phrase in the warrant draft for this proposed bylaw. That's 854, number 5, to delete everything after the word for. All in favor of this amendment, please raise your cards. All those opposed to the amendment? Thank you, and the motion fails. We are now back to debating the main motion, which is still as it's printed in the warrant.
Okay. Sharon Gregory, Hollenbach Avenue. These clusters, for this motion and the next one, I'm very concerned that for 13 years we haven't had another master plan, and the thought of putting these major changes in without the context of wondering where we're going doesn't make sense to me. It's very confusing, and I'm not sure what we'll have at the end of it. I am, as somebody else was concerned with the maximum number of, these various units. I'm also concerned who is thinking about our infrastructure costs, whether it's water, sewer, other utilities. And I would like to feel that we know where we're going and that we have all the components together and we are in agreement of that. The campus issue is kind of related, and I'm concerned about that too. Are we happy with 10, 4 to 8 clustered units, near the pond side or whatever? What are we trying to create? So I would like to, I don't know, maybe I can't make a motion to postpone this so that the town can have more visibility on what we're planning with these major changes. Thank you.
You made a motion to postpone this until when, or postpone it indefinitely?
Thank you.
Have you made a motion?
Yes. I'll get it in writing.
There's a motion to postpone this matter indefinitely. There's a second. Any discussion on whether we put this one off for now?
Mr. Moderator, just on a discussion on the motion to put this off. The planning board has debated the existing law, which was referenced as the Planned Unit Residential Development, the PURD. Yes, the existing law is there, and yes, it would allow some type of small-scale development. But the point of amending the bylaw now is because the existing PURD, Planned Unit Residential Development Law, doesn't require clustering. It doesn't require smaller homes. And in fact, the permitting process is quite onerous. It involves 3 different permits through 2 different boards. So the master plan does encourage wise use of land and the promotion of additional housing opportunities, particularly housing that may be less expensive. And so the planning board, taking that master plan as its cue and recognizing the difficulties of the existing law, is proposing this new article, this residential cluster, to fix those problems.
At the moment, we're debating whether to take a vote on this or to postpone it. Jim?
Yeah, Jim Bailey, 9 Lynn Lane, Housatonic. Just a quick question, and I hope somebody can answer it. Who will be the permit granting authority, the final permit granting authority in this new recommendation?
Someone on the planning board want to recite what's in the proposed bylaw?
The bylaw as written, if the property follows the guidelines of the bylaw, then the development would be allowed by right if it follows these guidelines.
Could I suggest an amendment to that then?
At the moment, we're dealing with whether to deal with this at all, to postpone it completely.
Brandy Nelson, 28 Barrington Place. I'm the chair of the planning board. I appreciate if town meeting would vote against the current motion to table Article 23. The planning board has been working for several months on this per our interim town manager and planner Chris Rembold's comments that you all just heard. We found deficiencies in the PURD, we found challenges in the PURD, and the new RCD is proposed to create another option, just an option. It's not applying, development in everybody's adjacent property. This is just one more tool in the town's toolbox to try and create a variety of different housing because we know we have a shortage of housing.
In the interest of moving this along, let's test. The motion on the floor right now is to postpone this matter indefinitely. All in favor of taking that action, please raise your cards. All opposed? We want to continue to take action right now. The main motion is still on the floor. Any further comments or questions about the main motion? Jim, you wanted to make an amendment.
Well,
Were you?
may I propose that we actually have an accounting of what people want to use the land for that's in consideration of any of these issues?
Okay, yeah, there's a question to the
Do you want
planning
me
board
to
to
answer
address
that?
at a certain point.
Do you want me to respond to that?
Yes,
I feel
1
like
minute,
that would
1
be
minute.
fair to the commenter. So, ma'am, this is a zoning proposal. It is language that would create a bylaw that would provide some new development opportunity to various parcels that are undeveloped or underdeveloped in the town. We don't know where. It could be applied in any number of areas, okay, that meet the criteria as listed in the bylaw.
Okay, Jim, you wanted to make an amendment.
Yeah, due to the fact that by right is an intimidating word, I'd like to make the amendment that we have the select board or the planning board be a final issuing of the permit.
That being a substantive amendment, I need to have it in writing.
Second.
We haven't seen the motion yet. Jim, what I think you want to have is have the select board be the permit granting authority. Am I right?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to ask town council to explain what can and can't be done in this context.
Mr. Moderator, the motion presented to you does not address the detailed language of the proposed amendment that's in the warrant. If the intention is to have the select board act as a special permit granting authority, where you would propose to amend is in section 8.5.2, which currently reads, an RCD is permitted by right in those zoning districts so designated. An amendment to accomplish what the maker of the motion is suggesting would revise that to say an RCD is permitted by special permit, comma, with the select board as the special permit granting authority, comma, in those zoning districts so designated, etc.
Is that motion acceptable to you?
And Mr. Moderator, there's also, we would have to change in the table of use regulations 3.14 to use the designation of, change the designation of Y to SB, which is special permit by the select board.
Thank you. That is exactly what I would like to state.
Okay. There is a motion on the floor to add the requirement for a special permit to these operations, to these developments, and that the select board be the special permit granting authority. Is there still a second? Still a second. This amendment is on the floor.
I would like to speak.
Amendment.
I would like to speak to the amendment. Jorge Adrian Alcala, 139 Alford Road in Great Barrington. I think that this is a bylaw change. It's, sets forth what can happen and what cannot happen. To make it require a permit seems to me to be adding a level of complexity, putting more barriers to adoption of such a provision, and adding more burden onto the select board, who would have to review any such applications. And I don't really understand why that's necessary. My understanding is the bylaw says, if you do this, then you can do it. Is that approximately correct?
Your understanding is correct. The proposal from the planning board is a by right rule, and the amendment before us right now would require a special permit.
Thank you. Then I urge people to reject the amendment. Thank you.
Any further discussion of the idea of the amendment to make this a special permit matter?
Yes, Mr. Moderator, Brandy Nelson, 28 Barrington Place. Again, I'm the chair of the planning board. I would like people to turn in their warrant to page 10. And I can appreciate that all these zoning articles are wonky, and the planning board is people that are design professionals, and we probably have an unhealthy love of this kind of wonkiness. But let me try and help. When we say by right, we don't mean that that I can go tomorrow and put this on my property. We say on page 10, under section 858, that this requires site plan approval. So there's already a point where if you want to do a cluster development, you can put a site plan together and you have to come before the planning board. When we say by right and we require a site plan approval, we are putting guardrails on it. It does come before the planning board. We spend a lot of time at meetings going over the details of layouts of site plans with people that come before the board. But what we also hear is when there is a requirement like a special permit, that creates an additional level of uncertainty for people, whether you're a mom and pop wanting to add a couple of units and earn some income, or you're a local developer that wants to add housing to our housing stock. That special permit has all sorts of stops at the state level that can deter the development. And so one of the goals of the planning board over the last few years has been to try to reduce barriers and create opportunity to housing, and that is consistent with our master plan. So I would urge you to reject this current motion to add a special permit requirement.
We do it by voting, not by clapping. Any further comments on this amendment to add the special permit requirement? Seeing none, the vote is on the amendment to make this subject to special permit granted by the select board. All in favor? Thank you. All opposed? Amendment fails. Is there any further discussion on the main motion, which is the proposed bylaw in the warrant unamended? This requires a 2/3 vote. I will try to take it by show of cards. All in favor? Raise your cards. Thank you. All opposed? Motion carries by 2/3 at 456. Article 24, also a zoning article on the campus overlay district. Is there a motion from the planning board?
Voted that the town amend the zoning bylaw by adding new section 9.15, campus overlay district, and revising section 2.2 in the zoning map to list and show the district as set forth in the Article 24 of the warrant for this town meeting.
Is there a second? Second. Motion made and seconded. An explanation from the planning board.
Yes. Do I have to identify myself?
I recognize you, Jonathan.
All right. This article proposes a new overlay district comprising 17 parcels on Bard College at Simon Rock's site of approximately 275 acres. An overlay district keeps the underlying zoning in place while enabling other uses. The current campus, spanning 2 residential zones, contains a variety of building types that are not in conformance with the uses permitted in the underlying zones and may be forced to close. As nonprofit educational uses are exempt from zoning regulations under state law, those uses to date have been legally permitted. If the educational use goes away when the campus closes this year, the residential zoning will make it difficult for the campus and many of its buildings to be repurposed. While we know little about how Bard plans to sell the campus or who may be interested in buying it, the Planning Board recognizes the potential the campus has to improve the town's tax, employment, and residential bases, and that its existing athletic and performing arts facilities have become extremely important resources for our town. Seeing that the residential zoning will be an obstacle to most potential reuses of the site, the board believes the applicable zoning needs to be more flexible to position the campus to take full advantage of this opportunity. The Campus Overlay District proposes a set of regulations that would allow existing buildings to be reused by right for a variety of purposes as set forth in the article. See pages 11 and 12 of the warrant. Some uses that would represent a change from the existing conditions may be allowed through a special permit process, and other uses not in keeping with the character of the area will still be prohibited. The overlay district has important natural resources, including our drinking water aquifer, which must be protected. For these reasons, the board voted unanimously to recommend that the town meeting approve this article to foster economic development through reuse and redevelopment. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe there is an amendment going to be proposed to this item.
Fred Clark, 388 Park Street North. I propose to amend Article 24, Section 9.15.3 by deleting in its entirety the phrase, "the planning board," and replacing it with "the select board." The effect of this is to make the select board the special permit granting authority under the underlying zoning amendment.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Fred, would you like to explain your amendment?
I would. The purpose of this amendment is to align this section of the zoning code with the majority of the zoning code, which gives the authority for special permits to the select board in the majority of cases. The planning board is, as we've heard, has very little to do with what we had as a discussion before. In this article, there are a number of uses of the potential property that require a special permit. Those are changes, things like restaurants, hotels, and such. The select board is the appropriate board to parse out the balance there. We're not eliminating the planning board. The planning board will have site plan review. They'll work in conjunction with the select board to advise them. The planning board, as we've heard, is made up of civil engineers and land planners, and they do a very good job with all of the technical details like site plan development, road width, drainage, and things like that. But throughout our underlying zoning code, the authority to grant special uses resides with the select board. In a couple of cases, the planning board has the special granting authority, but for instance, for landscape changes or under the underlying lighting provisions. Those are primarily technical issues. The planning board can still work with the select board in very close work, and the select board is a better adjudicator of how people feel, what will work in a neighborhood. They're more connected, they understand how to balance things, where the planning board has more of a specific focus. Again, we're not trying to cut out the planning board in any shape or form. They do a great job. This is just aligning the underlying zoning with the rest of the zoning for this thing with the rest of our underlying zoning. Thank you.
Thank you. A response perhaps from the planning board.
Yeah, Pedro Pachano, 5 Abbey Hill, Vice Chair of the Planning Board. I'm just going to give you a few points why the Planning Board is the appropriate special permit granting authority for this and many other uses, frankly, that we don't have that authority for now. The Planning Board, we write and update the bylaw every year. We're the stewards of development rules in the town and should be the body responsible for implementing those laws. In fact, most towns in South County, including Stockbridge, Egremont, Sheffield, and Lenox, do not let the select board make land use decisions for special permits. You know, another reason why it's important for us to be the authority is to simplify the process. The way it is now, people proposing developments come for site plan to the planning board, then they have to go back to the select board, and sometimes the select board will approve a project without the planning board approving the site plan. So we have these kind of issues. It would be really nice to simplify that process. There's no question that we're the more experienced body to handle land use in town. We're the stewards of the master plan, where we study the needs of the town, not just the technical areas like lighting and landscaping, but you know, if you read the master plan, you'll see there's land use, open space and recreation, economic development, housing, energy, cultural and historic resources, and transportation. Currently on the board, we're not land planners. We've got 1 civil engineer, 2 architects, and 2 other professionals. Together, we have nearly 80 years of experience in land use that we bring to you, every town meeting, and that you guys are always very, very supportive of. We give equal time at our meetings. I mean, anybody who showed up to the recent zoning public hearings will know that I chaired those meetings and I gave plenty of time for people to speak. It was a super long meeting. The idea that we don't do that is incorrect in my opinion. I'll give you one example of how the planning board can be effective. Initially, if you're familiar with the Timberland nursing home project that's going on Maple Avenue, initially those developers came to the planning board accompanied by a group of residents to protest the project. The planning board gave specific instructions and recommendations to the developers to go and speak with the residents that showed up so that they can come to some agreement. A month later, they showed up, and the same citizens showed up to support the project. Lastly, it's been thought that the planning board is less of a political body than the select board, but we are all elected to our positions, and by definition, politics is the art of science concerned with guiding or influencing governmental policy. I would argue that that's exactly what we're doing today.
Thank you. I'll remind everybody we have 5 items to go. 4 of them are probably 1 minute each. So please stick around. We'd like to finish this today. There's a request over here? Eric, okay. I'll recognize it.
Yeah, I'd just like to speak to this motion. The way I see it here is by giving the select board the oversight, you're getting one more step into this approval. I understand what Pedro and the planning board are saying, but something as significant as this overlay for a vast part of the land and all the changes of use we need to be careful here. I do feel that the select board adds another attachment, personally, maybe because I'm sitting here, but I feel that there is a little more alignment with hearing of the voters. So, and not what it should be used for in that, but it's understanding the climate and hearing the feedback. And I don't see the harm in having one more approval. And I do feel like it's the responsibility of the select board in this instance. Thank you.
1 minute, Jonathan.
Okay, 1 minute. I think the planning board's a better special permit granting authority because all we deal with is zoning. And secondly, I think that the select board has a pretty full plate. We need a new town manager. We've got some bridges to replace. We've got to buy Housatonic water. We've got a high school that seems to be a problem. And, and running the town, it all takes time. And I think that the planning board has the time and the expertise to review a project as complicated as 275 acres and to do it carefully. Thank you.
Thank you. The issue at the moment is the amendment to substitute the select board for the planning board as the special permit granting authority. We're not yet voting on the overall rule. Are you speaking to the amendment?
Yes, sir.
Thank
Ton Toy, non-resident. I'm Senior Vice President and Chief Financial Officer of Bard College. It's not for me to tell you how to vote on this, but I do want to explain a couple of things in this process. One, for us, will be certainty of execution. So another layer is going to, be a consideration in that. What was brought up earlier in the initial proposal, I would just ask you all to consider also if we're restricted into having the sales group be largely populated by nonprofits, that doesn't accomplish anything and bring this onto the tax rolls. That window, that universe narrows the more steps we add to this, which is why we're generally in favor of the zoning overlay. But I see it as win-win for everybody, and we want to leave the property in good stored hands, and the bigger that universe is that we can look at, the better we're able to do that.
Thank you. 30 seconds.
I just want to clarify that the amendment has very little to do with most of the overlay district. Most of the overlay district is by right, and there's a very, very short period of different uses that will be required by special permit, such as restaurants and motels. With this amendment has very little to do with that underlying authority of the authority. I'm in support of the campus overlay district, and it will give most of that by right with a site plan review. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further comment on this amendment, did you not speak on the amendment already? I think you did. I call for a vote on the amendment to substitute the select board for the planning board as special permit granting authority. All in favor of that amendment, raise your cards. All opposed? Motion fails. Any further comment on the main motion, which is to adopt the bylaw as printed in the warrant? Here comes somebody who would like to comment on it.
I'm Kathy Ingram, resident of 107 Lake Mansfield Road, formerly part of Simon Jock campus. I'm very sad about the news announced 6 months ago about Simon Jock as it impacts our town and many of the employees and obviously the students there. I'm here, I wanted to speak up because I'm surprised this is on our voting today, or warrant today. As an abutter, I wasn't aware that this was even happening. My house is right there on that, one of those 4 blocks on the right. The fact that a hotel or worse could be built in this residential and forested area would be a detriment to our quality of life, not to mention our property values. I believe there's reason to bring this matter to the Community Preservation Committee as just one example due to the trails and other natural resources on this campus. I ask that this matter be tabled or postponed until there's an opportunity to meet with the property abutters and have more of a discussion with the planning committee. I motion to table this article.
I believe what you want to do is postpone it indefinitely, take no action at this meeting.
Yes.
Is there a second to that? That motion has been made and seconded to take no action on Article 24. This is debatable. Anybody want to debate whether to do this now?
Yes, sir. Pedro Pachano, Vice Chair of the Planning Board. I think if we all pay attention to what happens in town government, everybody would have known that we run public meetings for all of our zoning amendments. I think it's a little disingenuous to say that abutters didn't have an opportunity to come and weigh in on this article.
Thank you. Comment on whether we should postpone this indefinitely.
Amendment?
Name and address. At this point, what's before us is a motion to postpone, in essence, to table it.
So not postpone the amendment, the
We're
amendment to
back to the
postpone.
main motion. We're back to the main motion. The amendment failed. We're back to the main motion.
I thought she just made an amendment to postpone.
That's not, she made a motion to postpone.
Right.
And right now, the discussion is, do we postpone this indefinitely?
Thank you.
Name and
So,
address.
Jorge Adrian Alcala, 139 Alford Road. At various points in the article, it discusses the special permits that are required, including such things as hotels, that was brought up by the person who proposed the amendment, and other items. Given that these are continuing to be subject to special permit, I don't see any reason to postpone. I urge to vote against the amendment to postpone.
Further discussion on whether we put this off for later?
Point of order. Motion's not in writing? Where is it?
That motion need not be in writing. Trust me. Brandy, quickly.
Brandy Nelson, 28 Barrington Place, Planning Board Chair. With regard to the zoning overlay that is before us right now, what this does, as was stated by Mr. Henkin, is provide a path for reuse of the property. There is no proposal that I'm aware of right now for any redevelopment, and as was stated in the report to town meeting, that uses of the buildings on this property will not be permitted when the educational use goes away. We have already in our community a number of derelict buildings that have been subject to complicated redevelopment proposals, so complicated that they have in fact not been redeveloped. We are really trying to get ahead of this here by passing this campus overlay. It just creates a framework for reuse. When there is a specific development proposal, it will be subject to either a site plan review if it is one of the by right uses, as we just discussed in the last warrant article, or it will be subject to a special permit, and it will undergo a very, very thorough review process. So I want to just try and dial down any fear that people are having. This is just creating a framework for reuse of the campus, because those buildings cannot be reused once the educational use goes away.
Thank you. Please.
Hi.
One, briefly on the motion to postpone, okay?
Sure. Julie Anajar, 15 Sumner Street. I commend the objectives of the campus overlay district. I think it would make a lot of people feel better if there was a map of the protection overlay district for the natural environment. I also voted in favor of the select board having oversight because I think it's such an important property. But I think just a general polygon of this large district without any kind of additional map that shows where the protected overlay is. Is that it? So, thank you. Could you tell me a little bit about where I'm
You have a question? I'm sorry.
What are we looking at on this map? What is protected as far as environmental space? Okay.
So,
Because
let me let Chris Rembold, who is sort of a planner, respond to this, your question.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The map on screen is the actual zoning map with the red boundary is the proposed area of the campus overlay district. Within that red boundary, there is a kind of a light yellow, that's a residential 1 acre zone, and a green zone, which is a residential 2 acre zone. The blue polka dots are an aquifer protection district. So on both sides of Hurlburt Road, extending right to about where the Kilpatrick Athletic Center is, there's a lot of wetlands there. That's also an aquifer recharge zone.
Chris?
Does that respond to your question?
Sort of. I just want a little bit more clarification because my understanding just from living around there is that most of that yellow zone is forested. I know that there are a lot of buildings and there are a lot of the campus buildings and dormitories in that yellow district, but there's also a lot of forested area. I'm just concerned that we're only taking a small portion of the northwest wetland as a protected district. I think it would make a lot of people feel better to know
This is commentary on the main motion rather than on what to act on the motion, but I'll accept it because we're going to get there.
Mr. Moderator, may I respond just for community education, if you will? The zoning bylaw, I'm sorry, Brandy Nelson, 28 Barrington Place again. The zoning bylaw is just pertaining to land use. There are, in fact, wetlands and water bodies and streams on the property. Those are subject to Wetland Protection Act, which is a separate regulatory layer in land development. And if there were any proposed development activities that encroached upon the protective zones of those wetland areas, they would be subject to review by the Conservation Commission.
I would like to call a vote on the motion to postpone because what we're actually doing is talking about the merits, and if we, let's rationalize that. The motion is to postpone this indefinitely. All in favor, raise your cards. All opposed? Motion fails. Let's finish the debate on the main motion and take a vote as soon as we can. Any further comments on the main motion? No further comments? I will call a vote. This requires a 2/3 vote. All those in favor, please raise your cards. Thank you. All those opposed? Motion carries by 2/3 at 7:20. 5:20. I've got European time on my watch. Sorry. Article 25, is there a motion from the Planning Board? And by the way, thank you all for your devotion to public service. You're all still here. Thank you. Pedro.
Before my motion, I'd like to thank this body for always being very supportive of the Planning Board's endeavors. And I'd also like to thank town staff for showing up on a Saturday. Some people who are not going to be compensated for being here, I'd like to thank them for showing up. Voted that the town amends section 8.3.3 and 8.3.4 of the zoning bylaw as set forth in Article 25 of the warrant for this town meeting.
Is there a second? Motion made and seconded. Would the Planning Board like to explain the proposal?
Yes, sir. This article is proposed to amend certain requirements that have been found to be barriers to development, often making it impossible to develop multi-unit residential projects, even in districts where they are allowed by right. This proposal would reduce the amount of parking and permeable open space required for multi-unit dwelling projects, as amended. A project would still be required 25% permeable open space, conformance to lot coverage, all yard setbacks, while providing a minimum of 1 parking space per unit. I want to make it clear that we're not reducing parking. All we're doing is reducing the amount of open space that's required. So if you have a large lot, this is not an issue. It's really an issue when you have smaller lots. So the Planning Board unanimously recommends this to town meeting.
Thank you. Any discussion or questions about this proposal? This also requires a 2/3 vote, being a zoning article. All those in favor, raise your cards. Thank you. All those opposed? Motion passes by 2/3, but not quite majority, at 522. The next four items are real estate bits. They'll take longer to read than to vote on. Article 26, a motion by the Select Board.
Voted that the town authorize the Select Board to acquire certain easements through all legal means, including donation, purchase, and eminent domain. Said easements being described as Housatonic Trail Easement 1 and Housatonic Trail Easement 2, as shown on plan which is on file with the town clerk, as described in Article 26 of the warrant for this town meeting. To appropriate $1,000 from free cash for expenses related thereto, and to authorize the Select Board to take all actions to execute all documents necessary in connection within.
Is there a second? Motion made and seconded. Any questions or comments on easements for the Housatonic Rail Trail? This requires a 2/3 vote, being a real estate bit. All in favor, raise your cards. Thank you. All opposed? Motion passes by 2/3 at 523. Article 27.
Voted that the town authorize the Select Board to acquire certain easements throughout the fairgrounds property, being parcel 5 on Assessor's Map 25, through all legal means, including donation, purchase, eminent domain, to authorize the Select Board to convey or otherwise transfer certain easements or right of way on the property in exchange for the easements to be acquired. All said easements areas are illustrated on plan which is on file with the town clerk as described in Article 27 of the warrant for this town meeting, to appropriate $10,000 from free cash for expenses related thereto, and to authorize the Select Board to take all actions and execute all documents necessary in connection therewith. I always wanted to say therewith.
The motion has been made and seconded. Are there questions about rearranging the easements on the fairgrounds property? Seeing none, all in favor, raise your cards. Thank you. All opposed? Motion passes by a 2/3 majority at 525. Article 28, Division Street Bridge, rights of way.
Voted that the town authorize the Select Board to acquire easements and/or rights in, over, and through certain parcels of land for the purpose of maintaining a secure and public right-of-way on Division Street in order to allow for the construction of a bridge over the Housatonic River through all legal means, including donation, purchase, and eminent domain, said easement areas and parcels being shown on plans which are on file in the office of the town clerk, as described in Article 28 of the warrant for this town meeting, to appropriate $6,000 from free cash for expenses related thereto, and to authorize the Select Board to take all actions and execute all documents necessary in connection therewith.
The motion has been made and seconded to acquire some rights concerning the Division Street Bridge. Any questions about this? Seeing none, this is another real estate item requiring 2/3. All raise your cards, please. In favor? Thank you. All opposed? Motion carries by 2/3 vote at 526. And Article 29. Please don't break out in applause yet.
Voted that the town discontinue as a public way the portion of Ramsdale Road, so-called, as shown on plans on file with the town clerk, as described in Article 29 of the warrant for this town meeting, and to transfer the care, custody, and control of said discontinued portion from the Select Board for public way purposes to the Select Board for general municipal purposes and/or for the purpose of conveyance, and further to authorize the Select Board to convey and/or release all the town's right, title, and interest in said discontinued portion of Ramsdale Road on such terms as conditions for such consideration as the Select Board deems appropriate, and to execute any and all documents to effectuate the intent of this vote.
Can we effectuate a second on this motion? There is a
Never used
second.
that word either.
Any questions or comments on how punchy we are all at this point about getting rid of Ramsdale Road? Seeing none, a 2/3 vote is required. All in favor, raise your cards. Thank you. All opposed? Motion passes, but not unanimously. Somebody loves Ramsdale Road at 527. I did say 2/3. I'll say it again. If you say it, motion passes with a 2/3 vote at 528.
Second.
Motion to dissolve this meeting. Seconded. All in favor, raise your hands. Any opposed? Motion is dissolved at 528.